we are we're going to have a wonderful one today, and it's going to be very intense in light of what has been going on in the world with the police shootings. It's really incredible. What's more incredible to me is that I find that the opinions of those who leave comments on many of the social media platforms indicate to me that they're living in two different worlds. It's like they're on two different planets. One sees the glass half full, one sees it half empty. And so most of our opinions as Black people are left to be just that, opinions. And many people disregard what we have to say because they say we don't know what we're talking about. We know statistics and facts can be bent around and twisted around, as is always the case in the media. Depending on what news media platform that you are hooked onto or observing, they can take the same story and slant it in so many different ways. And so we're left wondering what really is the truth. And then recently, out in San Diego, California, we had another shooting of an unarmed Black man by police officers that are supposed to be trained into how to deal with a situation like this and make split-second decisions. It's almost like it's happening every week. And so our presence in media is filtered very much. They pick and choose who they want to have speak. And if you don't say what they want you to say, they cut you off. Well, here on the Lancescurv show, we don't do that. And for those who say that we're only speaking of an opinion that we don't know because we are not police officers, today we have a man who's a former LAPD police officer, Brian S. Bentley. He's also an author. He's written several books addressing this issue. He's going to spill it and he's going to speak it from the inside, from experience. So that cuts that right there. Brian, I want to welcome you to the Lancescurv show. I am very excited to have you here. And I also have to say, after reading up on you and observing all that you've put out so far, that you are a true man of integrity. And it's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here, to be able to speak to your group of people here.
Yes. Wow. Let me ask you one question, straight up. And I want those in the chat room right now, because if for those who are watching in the chat room, or you go to Lancescurv on YouTube, you'll see the live feed. You'll see the live stream. You'll hear us. You can also call 888-575-3769. I ask when you do call to listen in, you mute your phone to not, interfere with the interview, or we'll have to cut that off. But let me know how the audio is coming through for those who are watching. Okay. But the number one question I have for you, straight up, is there a blue wall of silence? Yes or no? And add your comments after that. We're going to get down. Let me just let everybody know this is a conversation. This is not a rigid interview where I ask you where you're born. I ask you what you like to do for sports or whatever. We're conversing, and this is the best way to get it out because we relate good this way. But is there a blue wall of silence?
Of course. I mean, everybody should know that by now. Yeah, there is definitely a blue wall. And if you cross that line, your career is done. And sometimes your life is over. So yeah, there's definitely a blue wall.
Now, I read, and everything is through reading. It's the second time we've actually spoke over the phone. And it's good to be kept it fresh that way, because now, we can really meld and blend our mind and our thoughts. But you spoke of manifestos. You spoke of the racism in the LAPD. And you named a lot of names and you said a lot of things, and I will not push you to go beyond what you're comfortable with. But you went into law enforcement with a pure heart. And I also sense that you still have a pure heart after all that you've been through. But how does one deal with going into law enforcement with such pure intentions as far as wanting to make a change, and then you realize that, this is not the game. This is not how it's done. It's a different world. than when you're on the outside. Take us through that. You worked, I believe, at a bank before?
Right. My parents always pressed the issue that you need to stay in the community, work in the community, build up the community, volunteer. So my parents always made sure that all the kids stayed in the community where we grew up. And so I worked at a bank,
Mm-hmm.
and the bank was in a pretty rough neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And, the bank was getting robbed a couple times. People were getting their accounts forged. And so police were always inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I got to know police officers that way. And I also saw a need for law enforcement based on that. I decided to look for another job other than banking.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the city of LA to look for a job because my father was a diehard civil service worker. And he told me it's hard to get fired from a civil service job.
Right.
Okay. I proved that wrong. So looked at all the jobs. I saw this advertisement of this black police officer wearing a suit with a badge. I saw the salary. And so I filled out an application. It was one of many applications that I filled out. And it just happens I went through the process and I became a police officer. And my intentions, and with a lot of black officers, and white officers come on the job because they want to maintain that status quo. They see police officers beating up people. They see car chases.
Yes.
They see black people getting shot. Come on the job for that. A lot of the black officers come on the job to actually make a change and to make a difference from what they see and what they've experienced. And that was me. I was naive. I really thought I could make a change. I thought I could make a difference. And I was actually one of the few police officers who actually worked in the area that I patrolled. I was the true meaning of community-based policing.
Mm-hmm.
I was there in the community. My station was probably about 5 minutes away from where I worked.
Wow.
So it wasn't just a job for me. It was actually, I was actually in the community and wanting to make a difference.
Mm. And that's a sincere feeling. And I hope you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's just a very sincere feeling, on my part.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went through I first took the oral. I took the written test. When I took the written test, it was taken at a high school, Hollywood High School,
Mm-hmm.
and every classroom was filled. It was specifically for black and minorities.
Mm-hmm.
So the high school was filled. There's probably about 3,000 people who took the written test.
Wow.
And we had an orientation, and they were telling us we need more black police officers. We need educated black police officers. We need people who have college degrees. And they were saying, we want to make a change. We want this to be a better police department. And so, I actually bought into it. And so when I got down to the oral interview,
Right.
there was only probably about 30 blacks at that oral interview. It went from 3,000 to 30 blacks. When I actually went into the academy, we had a class of 100, and it was only 9 blacks in my academy class. And the first day, my drill instructor, who was white, walked up to me and said, "You know what? We don't need people like you because we already have enough people like you in Nickerson Gardens. And Nickerson Gardens is a project in Watts.
Wow.
And you, black people, black males, somebody off the street from the project. That's how they viewed me from the start. And right there, that was very deflating. I wanted to quit right then and there, but I had made a commitment, and I guess against my better judgment, I stuck in there. And that's one of the deal with is a lot of times they see that there's a problem, and they see it's not going to work, but they don't want to give up and be quitters because they made that commitment to quit their other job and become a police officer. And the odds are against you from the beginning. They let you know that. Right. But you don't want to quit and you don't want to give in, so you continue to take that abuse and hope that things will get better. And they don't. They don't.
Wow. Well, it was for a divine reason that you were there and you went through all that you went through. And that way you can convey and share your experiences with the world, and hopefully that'll help somebody make that decision. Because I do believe that there are many ways that we can make a change in our community. But that had to be really rough in dealing with that. Now, after you were told that, and also name drop as much as you want, as far as like the projects that you mentioned, the streets. I want this to be real for the people who know those areas, and we know across the country that it could be anywhere and everywhere in this country, especially in the bigger cities, and especially in the smaller cities. So don't be afraid. I'm not saying you're afraid, but just don't hesitate to name drop and explain what it means. Like when you mentioned the projects, and I didn't know what that was, but you mentioned that it's, basically a Black, situation. But so what do you think that they were looking for them to say that to you once you got in there, right? They already knew that it wasn't going to be 3,000 candidates coming for that position. They knew that it was like sifting for gold, and you knock out the dirt and you find those nuggets. Well, you were obviously a nugget that they chose. What do you think they were looking for in the Blacks that they had that made it through? Was it a character trait? Was it your background, the fact that you had a college degree, so where you lived, or what do you think it was? Did you have anything in common with the other candidates and with the other people who went to the academy? You said it was about 9 that were there out of 100?
9.
Yes.
Right, 9 out of 100.
Right. What do you think the common thread was, and how did you all treat each other? Did they have the same experience to say, hey, did this guy tell you the same thing? What was that common thread?
What they saw in me, and which I really rehearsed very well, is that I was told that when they look at you, they want to see a drinking buddy. They're not looking for somebody who's out there to protect and serve and be a soldier. They're basically looking for a drinking buddy, somebody they can confide in, somebody who they can get along with, who won't make waves and just accept what's going on. They don't want anybody radical. They don't want anybody who's looking for change. When they look for your answers, they want you to give an answer that that goes with whatever's going on at the time. They don't want to look for somebody who's trying to make a change and make a difference in the department. They're looking for people who will go along with the program. And I knew that. I presented myself as when I went through my oral interview. And but they're police officers, they're trained. My drill instructor spotted it right off, that I wasn't going to conform. They could look at me in my eyes and tell,
right,
by the way they were treating us, that I had problems with it, being a police officer and being someone who judges character.
Yes.
And they saw that I was going to be a problem right away. So and I had a pretty difficult time during the academy because of that.
Right.
And a lot of other officers went through the same thing. It was a very stressful time. We all bonded together. We're still good friends, all 9 of us.
Yes.
The ones that stayed. And even the ones who left, and a couple of them got fired. Right. Like I did, but we all still good friends, and we talk, and we share our experiences. So it bonded us. And our opinions are different, though. Even though we went through the same experience, we still have different opinions. Right. People think that all Black police officers have the same opinion, that we see what's going on, and we automatically think that it's injustice. But some of my coworkers, some of the people I went through the academy with, don't have a problem with what they see. Videos of unarmed Blacks being killed, they have the same view as the white officers. It's a culture that you're into. And this culture, law enforcement culture, is a culture of violence, a culture of control. If someone doesn't listen to you, doesn't obey your commands, they feel it's okay to use lethal force. Because in the academy, you're taught to use whatever force you can to always gain control.
Interesting. Just recently, your audio went up really good, and before it was a little low. I don't know if you could just keep the mouthpiece right by your mouth and just project in a little more. This happens because we are speaking, by landline, coast to coast. So, technology may not favor us, especially with the powers that be who are listening. Sometimes that happens. But that's interesting that you'd say that about the force matrix and the control, the fact that it's a culture. Many of us who are civilians look to that black officer, but to understand. My experiences, and I put it out there, so I don't really have to go into it that deep, but my experiences is that, you know, many of the officers that don't live in those particular inner city black neighborhoods are put there, and they don't have that innate way of communicating where, you know, the guys in the street, they're not going to bull crap you. You know what they're doing. They know, but a lot of the rookies or even the guys who have been there for years, it's like they don't get it. They don't understand. Like the way we communicate as black men. You know, we might get amped up a little bit. I don't drink, but some might drink. And they're with their buddies who they would never do anything violent with, but they're talking about a football game and they're using their hands. Hey, man, so and so and so. And somebody else will come and say, oh, my God, are they going to fight? Do you find that many of the black officers don't have that measure of connectedness, or they do, but they shun it because they don't want to be looked at by their fellow white officers as somebody who's giving a brother a hookup?
I think they do. Well, it depends, because the LAPD and most of the other law enforcement agencies don't actively recruit from in the hood.
Mm-hmm.
The people that they are recruiting in the general population of where they recruit from is not that type of brothers and sisters. They're
Right.
different.
Right.
They're different. So, I don't think that a lot of them are actually trying to, hide it or keep it low profile. A lot of them don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're familiar with Los Angeles, we have an area.
Mm-hmm.
The Valley is a suburb, and it's predominantly white, but you have, some black families out there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the people that they recruit are from the Valley. They don't have the inner city experience. They don't have, they don't react the same way. They don't
Right.
talk the same way as some of the blacks in the hood. So they identify more with whites than they do black. And it's definitely a cultural difference. Even with especially with the whites. I had I was training this young white female, and we were driving down Crenshaw Boulevard, which is a famous street in LA.
Yes, and I know about that. Even though, I'm always hearing Crenshaw. So
Right. Yeah, I worked on Crenshaw.
Oh my God!
All the stuff you see on the movies and stuff, I was there.
Wow.
But we're driving down, and you see there was some guys from the Nation of Islam,
Mm-hmm.
dressed in suits,
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of the street. They're selling bean pies.
Right.
So this rookie, she says, he's in the middle of the street. Is he selling drugs?
Oh.
I said he's selling bean pies. She's like, well, what is that? Is that heroin? What kind of narcotic is a bean pie? And I'm looking at her, waiting for her to laugh, right?
Right.
And she doesn't laugh. She's like, did we stop him?
Oh, God.
He's out there selling bean pies. So I had to pull over, and just break it down to her. Okay,
Right.
This would be. Let's get one, right?
Right.
Buy one.
She'd love it.
Yeah, she loved it. She did. She loved it. So I had to break it down. But
Right.
people come into the city, into the black community, and they have no idea what the black community consists of. And I'll use another example. When I was in the academy, once you're finished the academy, you get to choose 3 divisions where you want to work.
Mm-hmm.
3 areas. Everybody, the black community, like 77th Division, which is an infamous area where a lot of blacks, a lot of gangs,
Right.
gang-infested area.
Right.
Newton's another division. And everybody chose 77th, Newton, and Southwest. Those were all in South Central LA. Now, these officers were white. Most
Mm-hmm.
of them were from Montana, Utah,
Wow.
Arizona. They weren't from California. They had just heard the reputation
Mm-hmm.
of South Central LA, and they all wanted to work there. Where you have the most shootings. That's where you have the most excitement.
Right.
White officers look at it as it's a recreational sport to them.
Hunting.
Hunting black men is a recreational sport to them.
Mm.
And just like people who hunt deer, everybody knows where to find the biggest buck. You know where to go to find, the best game. Law enforcement know what cities to go to for the best hunting, the best game, where to feed their ego. And so they all gravitate to the minority communities, for recreational sport.
I never looked at it that way. I mean, see, this is why it's valuable. You're very valuable, man. To even break that down. I never heard it broken down that way. Wow.
Well, one of the things that we talk about, we talk about on roll call is that police officers consider themselves as hunters of men. And, that's the terminology that we use among each other. Mm-hmm. Hunters of men, because that's their recreation. Some people fish, police officers hunt men, that's their recreational sport. And, I had mentioned that another time on an interview I did, and people were calling and people sent me nasty emails and stuff saying I was making this stuff up. And then I did a search online and I found out that in New York, officers, this is a couple of years ago, were reprimanded for wearing T-shirts that said "Hunters of Men."
Whoa!
So if you guys do a search, you'll see that that terminology is just not LAPD. It's
right.
It's a national terminology, which I didn't know at the time.
So, do you feel that a lot of white supremacists gravitate toward? I mean, I'm at right. It's like a crazy question to ask because we already know. Think that they gravitate toward law enforcement, and or some that come to law enforcement who may not all the way be in, get around that culture, and then amplify something up inside of them, and they say, "Hey, I like this. I can get with this," and they become more of that. And where is the dividing line? Because the black officers have to see this, because I know personally officers that I've grown up with that tell me, especially up in New York, that have told me what it's like, and it wasn't what they thought. That they give the black officers the tours that they don't want, or something to get them back, or there's so much politics involved, and you have female officers who are sleeping with supervisors to get favor. Tell me about how that works on the inside, and just go in and just tell me what that's like. I mean, is it that like obvious? That's got to make your day not good when you know you're going into that type of situation.
Well, I came on the job in the late 80s, 89, and I was there, I was a rookie, 89, 90, and I thought that it was like 1960. My first training officer was white. And so before we left the station, he looked at me and he goes, "Look, I'm just going to be honest with you." He says, "I'm not here to train you. I'm here to fire your black ass." He said, because blacks are only on the job because of affirmative action. If it wasn't for the affirmative action, we wouldn't have blacks on the job. We wouldn't have women on the job. And a female officer's only purpose is to have oral sex in between cars, in between radio calls.
Wow.
He said, so my job is not to train, it's to get rid of the people who don't belong here. And that was my first speech by my training officer before I went out in the field.
Wow.
And so that was 89, 90. It's a little difficult. It's different now because they cracked down and police officers can't speak what's on their mind.
Right.
But at that time, which is not even that long ago, that's what I was told. And it was no big deal. And the captain of my division was black. And I went to the captain and explained to him what he said. And my captain looked at me and said, I went to my captain, I told him, I said, "Hey, my training officer is racist." And he looked at me and said, "You didn't think I knew that?" He said, "Half the people on the job are racist." He said, "My first 10 years, they called me the N-word. They didn't even call me by my last name. My name was Officer. So you got it good." He said, "So you have it good.
That's crazy.
There's no need for you to complain." And he said, "Even if I take your complaint, I'm going to complain to the to maybe the deputy chief or the commander. He said they're racist too. Explain to the chief who's racist, you know, the mayor is racist. He said, so what do you expect me to do?
Right.
He said, get the hell out of my office.
So that was it. He just accepted it, wanted to ride out, get his pension, and just be Officer Nigger. And he was okay with that.
He was okay with it. And law enforcement was okay with that for a long time. And there were a number of officers who filed lawsuits, who won lawsuits, who had to leave the department, who feared for their life to make it to how things are now. It's still bad. Same view, you just can't express it, you know, but it's there, and you know it's there. A lot of the officers are supposed to be, you know, the department teaches you in the beginning that you're all blue. Everybody's blue. We're family. White officers call black officers brother. Everybody's calling each other brother, you know, because we're all blue. But some of them don't even speak to you. You see them, they look the other way. And these are people that you work with. They don't even talk to you. Don't even look at you. You know, if you're perceived to be somebody who is not following the program, who hasn't fully conformed, they don't even acknowledge you at all. And they'll go out of their way to try to get you fired. An example is, you know, I had a good career. I was known as one of the aggressive officers. I made a lot of arrests, arrested a lot of people with guns and so forth. And we had this sergeant who was talking in roll call one day, and there was supposed to be, someone gave us information that there was going to be a drive-by shooting. So the sergeant says, well, you know, there's going to be a drive-by shooting at midnight. So you know what that means? That means don't go into that area until about 3 o'clock. Clean up the mess. You know, we don't want to prevent it. We don't want anything to do with it. We're just going to take the report, clean up the body after that. And so, you know, I was upset by that. I was offended because, again, I live in the neighborhood, right? And so, you know, I stood up, I gave this speech and told them how we were all supposed to be police officers and, you know, everybody's supposed to be gun-ho and bad and, you know, these badasses and nobody wants to do anything, you know, when they hear information, don't want to prevent it. So I got labeled as a troublemaker. So
wow.
I was this police officer where, you know, I had a couple of arrests where I used force. Sergeant would just say, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. You know, didn't even listen to the complaint or anything. It was like, don't worry about it. You know, I'll take care of it. And so once I made this speech, the next day I was written up for having a paper cup in the back seat of my patrol car.
Oh, anything they can do.
Right. And so then I denied it and said the window was down. How do you know that was my paper cup? He took the paper cup, went down to downtown to try to have the paper cup fingerprinted.
Oh!
They went to that extent to prove a point. And that's the way the department is. You can beat somebody to death. You can shoot somebody. Nothing will happen. You say the wrong thing. You don't conform, and they will go all out to get rid of you, to ruin your career, try to ruin your family, put you in jail, do everything. Everything. And I don't know if you guys are aware or remember there was a black police officer named Christopher Dorner.
Yes.
Who had the...
Yeah, no, I did an illustration of him. I drew a picture of him in my art page.
Okay, he had the same complaint years after I did, and it bothered him so much that he went on a shooting spree. But he complained about the same thing, and I thought that was really interesting because it was years after I had written my book, and my book is basically about that, about how you can just basically just do anything you want, but just keep your mouth shut. And you know, breaking that code of silence or going beyond that blue wall is the biggest felony that you can do as a police officer. And then they don't try to fire you because they can pretty much, because you're trained to be terminated. They tell your first day, they tell you all the stuff of what not to do. Forget everything you learned, how you're going to do it on the street. So they train you to fail. They train you to get fired, anything. But they go over and beyond, and they try to ruin your life, and they try to ruin your career so you can't work in law enforcement ever again. And, you know, that's how it is as a black person, and that's why black officers don't speak out. And, you know, I'm one of the few that did speak out. I went through hell, and black officers are needed to speak out, but I don't encourage it because I know exactly what they're going to go through, and everybody can't take it.
Right. That's why I thank God for you, man. And you know, you went through a lot, and maybe you would look back and say, you know what, I don't think I can do this again. But you're here. You've been protected to be able to speak and articulate everything that you've been through your books and through your interviews. And it'll keep some of us from actually feeling as though we're going crazy. You know what I mean? I mean, if you wake up one day and everybody says, you know, the sky is pink, and you're looking at it, you say, I know the sky is light blue, sky blue, sky blue. There's no sky pink. And they keep saying this day in and day out. Many people will begin to question their sanity. So in a situation like, I mean, written up for a paper cup, dear Lord.
Right. And you know, what's interesting about it is when I wrote my book, my first book, which is called One Time, the story of a South Central Los Angeles police officer. When I wrote that book, there were no video, no camera, cell phone video of shootings. There was no cell phone video of anything. It was my word against the police department, my word against every law enforcement agency. And they did everything they could to try to discredit me. And I had no video. I had nothing out there. It was just, you know, I felt it was time. I felt that people needed to know what was going on. Harsh criticism for the things that I was saying, that police officers were violent. And the reason that I wrote my book One Time was because the things that I read, the things that I heard on television wasn't what I experienced. You know, and I wanted to say, yeah, you know, police officers are extremely violent, but the culture of law enforcement accepts that. They love that. And police officers feed on that, and this is why they do it. And so, you know, the department didn't want to hear that. They didn't want to hear that. And what's interesting about it is that I would get emails from people, from other officers, saying that their department was the same way. Some of them saying their department was worse. And I had no idea, you know, what they were talking about until I started seeing stuff on video, like everyone else.
Right.
And I'm amazed at some of the stuff that I've seen. And people are upset by the number of blacks that are killed every day. If you knew how many times police officers shot at black people and missed, you would really be upset.
Wow. Because
you're only hearing about the ones that are killed. You don't hear about the ones that police officers attempt to kill and fail. You know, the numbers are just mind-boggling.
So are they held to task for every bullet that's ejected from their weapon? The way that, you know, when they try to shoot it, is it something where, okay, you missed, nothing happened, let's sweep this under the rug? How do they treat that, the department?
Well, yeah, they do. They do treat it like that. I mean, I was in a foot pursuit. I chased a guy. My partner, who was on the other side of me, all of a sudden I hear like 10 rounds where he is. And basically he had shot 10 times at a guy and missed and just was like, oh, forget it. And the dude had his hands up and gave up. And, you know, you're accountable for every bullet that's fired from your gun. And so he tried to say it was a malfunction in his gun. And he went through this whole process, and they determined that, yeah, it could have been a malfunction. They couldn't rule it out that it was a malfunction. And so he still only received maybe like a 2-day suspension for attempted murder on an unarmed person.
So it's
Yeah. So, I mean, people would be, the number of times that officers shoot and are unsuccessful, you know, you would really be shocked, really be upset.
Have you seen any situations in the media, like on television, that you've known, you know, like on the local news and different things that have happened, and you kind of have more of an insight as to what it really was, and you see how they've gotten off the hook? Have you ever experienced that?
Well, I haven't experienced that per se, that particular situation. However, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Rampart scandal that they had, where they had officers who were taking drugs off of drug dealers and selling them. And they had some officers who had actually shot and killed some drug dealers and so forth. I knew all those guys that were involved. Some of them were my workout buddies. We used to work out every other day. They were in different divisions. I wasn't at Rampart division, but I knew those guys, you know, from being on the job and working out with them and stuff. So I see bad cops on television all the time,
Hmm.
in the news all the time that I know. In fact, I've had, I'm estimate about, I think I've had probably about 8 partners that I've had
Mm-hmm.
that actually went to prison for crime. One for rape, actually 2 for rape. One guy had a security company, and the security company only hired him part-time. For the days that he didn't work, that his company didn't work,
Mm-hmm.
the officers would rob the place
Wow.
so they can get more work hours. So, I mean, I've had partners who were in prison for stolen car ring, all kinds of things, fraud, check cashing fraud. So it's been a total of about 8, and that's on the low end. It may even be more.
Mm. So I would have to feel like, wow, what did I walk into? What kind of situation did I walk into? As far as what most people would consider conspiracies when dealing with the police, what could you share that would let us know that we're not as crazy as many try to make us think, especially in the Black community? They say we're paranoid of the police. And, recently they had Rodney King's daughter, the LAPD. It's almost like a makeover, an image makeover campaign where they had her speaking. And basically, I can't quote her exactly. I wish I pulled the clip up and played it. I might do that too. But she basically was trying to convey the message that the LAPD is different now, and we need to find solutions. And they had an officer there who, was a female who was speaking about, yes, there have been problems in the past, but we're really trying hard and we're cleansed of this. That Leviathan, those roots got to be so deep. Do you think that in 2016 that is any different than, say, 1996, 20 years ago?
When I hear that, that's the same stuff I heard when I came on the job. The exact same
Right.
words. And the police chief in Dallas who made the speech, come on, you have problems, come on the job, make a change, you be the difference. I heard the same speech in '89 when I came on the job.
Mm.
And I'll tell you now, the officers that I spoke of who were training officers who said they didn't like blacks and females, they're now sergeants and lieutenants. So they may not be able to express it, but they're there, and I know they didn't change. I know they weren't saved. Their view has changed. I know they're there, and they're still harboring the same resentment towards blacks and women. And so, it hasn't changed. They're just going to use another method to get it done. And the way the LAPD works, like now they're only hiring like one black person. So within probably about 25 years, the black officer will be extinct from Los Angeles because they've, successfully made it so they only are hiring the bare minimum. And eventually, you won't have any black officers. So it hasn't changed, and I don't think it's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Because they like that. They like those Vikings. They like those white Vikings. That type of cop, And
Yeah.
so, that's what they look for. And those guys rise to the top really fast. And so, it's not an illusion. It's not something that people are making up. There's definitely a problem in our black neighborhoods dealing with law enforcement. And you can have police officers who will pass out hamburgers and dance with people. Those police officers are not the problem, okay? The officers that I'm talking about would
Mm-hmm.
never be seen in a video, would never be seen playing basketball with kids, never be seen handing out ice cream. There's like a subculture. You have those nice officers who get tired of the streets, who are afraid of the streets, and they go into community relations to try to build up the relationship. They do a good job. They're there at all the events and stuff, but they don't have any control over that cop that works at night, that works the graveyard shift.
That's right.
Whose sole purpose is to capture, arrest, to work out their frustrations and their anger out on black people.
Wow. You mentioned. Go ahead. Continue. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was saying that you have all these organizations, Blue Lives Matters, that support law enforcement unconditionally, but they're the ones that are doing the most harm.
Right.
Because police officers are damaged. They're really damaged product. Some of it is racism. Some of it is just pure mental illness. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had some partners who were just really disturbed. The life that police officers lead. They have wives, they have girlfriends, they have kids out of wedlock, they have child support payments. Every time they get a check, some of them live in rundown apartments, but they have a wall full of guns that cost $600 each, and they drink all the time, suicidal, and the only way they can get out their aggressions and their frustration and take it out on people, take it out on black people. And one of the things I wrote in my book is that anytime I had a bad day, I knew what corner to go to. I knew what gang member to stop because they had bad days too, and they'd be waiting for me. And we get out the car and we work out our aggression. And so, cops know that, and a lot of them are really, need psychological help. So there's so many factors that contribute to the brutality that goes on. And another thing too is steroid use.
Tell us about that, please. Tell us about that,
I had
please.
a sergeant that sold steroids out of his locker. And, it goes into that fear. Some white police officers are really afraid of black people so much. They see that image of that big, strong black man, right? And so they take steroids. They take steroids because they're afraid of being overpowered. And it makes them crazy. They're not taking them under a doctor's care. They're just using them. And a lot of them are really aggressive. And when they're aggressive like that, it's not just on duty. They carry that off duty as well. When you have a cop who's an asshole on duty, he's the same off duty. He's the same to his kids,
right,
and his wife and his girlfriend.
Right.
And I always equate it to like a light switch. You turn the light switch on, you turn it off. Keep turning it on and on, off and on, it's going to break. Either it's going to stay on or it's going to stay off. And that's the mentality of police officers. Some of them really have problems. They really have problems, and they use black men to take out their aggression and try to solve their issues, like heavy bags, our target. Right.
So, these guys, and we're speaking in general, but we're talking about those types, which sadly it's I would say majority of those white officers, but they don't have any spiritual grounding. They don't have any balance. And I have a theory that I've always shared with friends of mine, that many of them, they seek control in the streets while they're on the job, because many of them don't have the control in their own personal lives, and they're using this to make up. Also, you have many officers who are off duty, experience, especially up in New York, who may be roided up, juiced up, geared up with steroids, and they're extra aggressive. And they know that they're police officers, of course, and they know they can get away with certain things. And they also sometimes seek to start and provoke things in the street because they're a cop and it's off duty against somebody. They'll stare at you and what are you looking at type thing. And somebody will say, and it'll go that way. You know how that goes. But they want to have the final word. They will stage as in an opportunistic way these types of scenarios so that they can win at the end, they can get off in the end. But no matter how many drugs that you take, if you don't have confidence as a man deep down, you never will. And this is why I always felt that thing that we have as black men, there's a strength, there's a power that we have from within that they've always been envious of. And this goes back to the plantation. And they always seek to strip us down of that. And they can never get it in a bottle. They can never get it in steroids or creatine or trips to the gym or whatever, which the gym is a good thing. But that's to increase their weaponry to even it out, because we have that thing that is so mighty over them. Even when we are calm, even when we're not being aggressive, they look at us like that Corvette that's at the red light that's just idling. They know we have that power mentally, physically, and spiritually when we are on, and they just can't stand it, and they provoke. I see it. I see it now. I see it on my job. I drive a bus and there are police that are downtown and the stares and the way they look at you or whatever. And I know what it is. They're envious. You spoke of suicides of many officers before who kind of folded under the stress and how the department went after them even after they were fired. What's the closest situation to you? I know you know many, but could you have seen it coming when these officers, whether they were working or fired? Did you see that kind of thing coming for them?
No, I actually didn't. And I have extensive training in psychology. I actually used to volunteer at a residential crisis facility, and that was my off-duty job. And so I consider myself more knowledgeable than others. However, there were probably like 3 officers that I know personally that committed suicide who called me before, and I had no idea. Called me. One of them I hadn't seen or spoke to since I was in the academy. They weren't actually my academy classmate, but we were in the academy at the same time. And he called and he had talked about my book and he had read my book. And, we talked about some old times. We talked about working out. And I thought it was kind of odd that he would just call me out of the blue and talk like that. And I found out that a week later that he had committed suicide. And, the same case for another officer who had called me and we reminisced and talked. And same thing, I found out about a week later they committed suicide. And so, I've known personally quite a few officers that have committed suicide, and they seem like they have the perfect life. Some of them recently married, but, it's the stress of the job. It's the stress of their life, and, it's a hard thing, and police officers can't go and talk to people. If you talk to people, you're weak.
Right.
So they don't do that. And even though they're suicidal, they're afraid to talk to someone, a psychologist, because they'll get their gun taken away. That's one of the things that police officers that they hold dear to them is their weapon, their duty weapon. And they will do everything they can to hold on to that weapon. And they will not talk to anybody. They will not, let people know what they're going through. And I know from personal experience, I've never been depressed or suicidal, but I learned early on that I couldn't talk to anybody.
Right.
I'm very close to my family.
Yes.
Very close to my mother. I was a mama's boy. And I remember my mother. I was a rookie, and it was at Thanksgiving dinner, and everybody was excited that I was a police officer, and everybody wanted to know a story, what happened. And I tell them we went to this call, and somebody got shot in the head, and their brains was on the ground, and their eye was over here. I was smiling, I'm laughing, and I'm eating turkey. And I look up, everybody's mouth is open, and they're like in shock. I was like, what's wrong? I was like, that was funny when I told it at the station.
Right.
And they were like, you changed. My mother's like, you've changed. You've changed. I was like, no, what are you talking about? You guys asked me how my day was.
Wow.
And I learned, then I could not talk to anybody. Girlfriends, no one. And the things that I wrote about in my book was a surprise to the people I knew because I never talked about it. I couldn't because nobody would understand. And everybody would look at me as, as if I was sick and I had a problem, because at that time I was very violent as a police officer, very short-tempered, very angry. I was angry and didn't even know why. Mad all the time. I don't even know why I was mad. Just mad, hostile.
Yes.
Always carried at least 3 guns, and I really don't even know why. But, that's something that police officers go through. That's part of that psychological change, that process that you go through from wanting to help people. And if you look like on the back of my book, one of the things I say is that I came on the job to make a difference, but the only thing that I realized and that I noticed is that I'm the only one that's changed. I'm the only one that's different. And I felt that. I felt I didn't make an impact, that the job was just impacting me and changing me. And that's one of the reasons that I started to look inward and to express myself through writing and writing articles and writing books.
Wow. And you know, that only makes me see you as more of a man of integrity because you can admit what you were going through and how your mindset was altered by being in that environment. You know, it's how did you come out of that? I mean, you know, it's kind of tough because I've known not all of my friends, but some who have gone that way. I've seen others who cling more to their family and they have their, you know, spiritual beliefs and things on that level. But some, they get out there, into the grimy world and see things, and it just leaves scars within, and it can't come off of them. I've seen things that I'm not even a cop, never been, just corrections for a couple of years, but I was already righteously tainted by the time I did that, you know, coming up in New York City. But still, things bother me as a civilian, so I know they have had to bother you. What were some of the things that, in dealing, whether it was with other officers or things that you saw when you showed up on the scene of an incident, that really, like, even to this day may have like bothered you, with a child, something with an innocent person, or some injustice that you left saying, wow, this world is not as balanced as it's trying to portray itself?
Right. There are a few things that when people ask me that question, that just automatically pop into my mind. First one was the first homicide. Well, not the first homicide. It was a hit and run in an area called Westwood, which is by UCLA, and it's a nice upscale neighborhood. And a couple was having their 25th and wedding anniversary. They rented a Ferrari. They got dressed, tuxedo, nice gown, and they were crossing the street and they got hit by a car. Uh-huh. And I was a rookie at the time. They got hit by a car. They were probably about 50 feet from each other. They were still, the husband was dead. The wife was still alive, and she was reaching towards her husband. And as she was dying. And I was in the middle, you know, and I felt like I had to say something, didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do. You know, just had to be professional and watch this. You know, that was like a really hard thing to see, especially being one of those, probably like the third homicide, a third death that I've seen and that I, you know, experienced. And I remember that all the time. That always pops into my head all the time. Another instance is when I interviewed a 12-year-old girl who was raped on a bus stop. Guy picked her up, raped her, and then read her the Bible, scriptures out of the Bible to tell her why she was dirty, evil, and why she was going to hell. Oh, you know, that man. Really, and I had to interview her, and she had to tell me everything that happened.
Yes.
You know, and that was very troubling. You know, that was very troubling because I saw the girl, you know, as I mentioned, I live in the neighborhood.
Right.
And so, you know, a couple times I saw the girl in passing. She didn't know who I was, but I recognized her, and I, you know, just would always think about that.
Right.
And that really bothered me. The third thing that stands in my mind, it's kind of sick, kind of funny though. There was this guy from the Middle East, and he came over here to make money for his family. He failed, so he tried to commit suicide by cutting off his penis. And
it's not funny, but yeah. How do you like? Why is it the penis's fault?
I don't know, man, but that's a sight, a vision. Even as I'm telling you now, my stomach hurts. That I will never ever forget. And then to make matters worse, I watched them sew it back on at the hospital, and so that was very memorable.
Let me keep all sharp objects away from me. If I fail at something, no, I'm not. I don't think we'll find any brothers out here that will do something like that.
Yeah, and I see that image all the time, man. It'll just pop in my head sometimes, like, "Whoa, God, y'all got stuff." Man,
wow.
You know, those are the three things that really stick into my mind. You know, and you mentioned that some of these officers are not spiritual.
Yeah.
You know, I came from a very spiritual family. I sung in the choir, ushered. My father was a trustee in the church, so you know, I was raised in the church, and even as a police officer, I still went to church all the time. except under my suit, I had a gun on my ankle and one on my hip, and I had one in the car because my church was in a bad neighborhood. It was in the really bad part, and I didn't feel safe at church, which is really crazy. You know, I mean, maybe it's not because of what we've seen recently, you know, where people coming in and shooting up churches, but at the time, I didn't feel safe at church. You know, the house of the Lord, I didn't feel safe. That was my police training, my police experience. I didn't feel safe anywhere. You know? And even at home, you know, I mentioned before, I live in the community. The bathroom, I have my gun in the bathroom. I never went anywhere without my gun. You know, I'm sitting on the toilet and my gun is at my feet. You know, I never went anywhere without it.
Right. I'm not laughing at you, but I understand. I understand somewhat that mentality. I understand it. You know, even personally, I understand it because I've been through things personally that I'm always like ready. And I'm not going to walk around like that, armed like that all the time, but I'm always walking around ready. It's like I'm always, when somebody gets, you know, I drive a bus out here in Orlando, Florida. So, you know, I have to see people that when I used to work in the jail that, you know, I get nothing but love, but still, you never know. Somebody could snap on you. And I'm always ready because I drive through neighborhoods that most don't want to drive through. So I get along and we speak and I have to straighten people out, whatever. I'm real, but you're always ready. You just have that mentality. You know, it's a good thing to a point.
Right. So, you know, as a police officer, I was extremely paranoid, always. And once I left the department, it was very hard to get rid of that. You know, to allow people to walk behind me. I still sit at restaurants, you know, facing the door and stuff. But, you know, I was always paranoid. And living in the community made me even more paranoid because every corner was a story. You know, every time I went to the store, looked down the alley, you know, I thought about something that took place there. And, you know, I was always paranoid. Extremely paranoid as a cop. And the white officers are the same way, maybe even more. That's why they live far out. There are very few police officers that actually live in the city of LA. They all live far in the suburbs.
Yeah.
And they're afraid, they're terrified, and they know they're not going to get good police service from the LAPD if they live in Los Angeles.
Well, I find that's true. You know, most they want to live far away, and even that won't save them because it's in their mind. It's like Teddy Pendergrass's old song, "You Can't Hide from Yourself." And when you do dirty things and dirty deeds, they will always haunt you. You'll always think that every little midget is that big monster who wants to come after you, or any little gaze when somebody looks at you too long. It's like, you know, does he have anything to do with what I did? Let me ask you something, and it's not off topic. It's pretty much on topic, but I don't know if you've ever heard of this incident. And again, Crenshaw pops into my head, even though I don't know it. I've never been on the West Coast. I've never been to LA, but there was someone who told me, and I heard this story from at least 4 different people, and 3 of them don't go online. So I'm not going to say it's some internet tale, but I was told in different ways that there was an incident where there was a huge crate that was dropped off I believe in this open lot in that particular neighborhood. Couldn't tell you exactly what street it was. It almost like a shipping container, but it was a crate. And there's a wooden crate, and you could see between the slats. And it was dropped off in one of the roughest parts there. And nobody knew what it was. And people were paranoid. People stayed away from it. And after a while, you know, hackhead that goes up to it and takes a peek inside and runs back and tells people what he thinks is inside of it. And more people came, hung around it. They felt safe, but nobody knows who brought it there, but it was dropped there. And someone got really brave once they understood that those were machine guns in there, and they started to pull away at the slats. And they got a hold of AK-47s and different types of weaponry there. And people took this stuff, ammo inside of it, and all these guns would get. Is that an old wives' tale? Is that some kind of, you know, made up imaginary urban legend type thing? Have you heard of that? I just have to put that out there because many people have brought that back to me again.
You know, I've not heard of that. I've not heard of that. But I will tell you that when I patrolled in South Central LA after the riots,
right,
we took assault weapons off of people every other day and guns off of people every day, sometimes 2, 3 times a day. We would spend almost a whole shift booking people with guns. Those guns were stolen, from the riots, from breaking into surplus stores and stuff. I hadn't heard the story about the crate being dropped off.
Mm-hmm.
But during that time, if it was during the 90s or so, that was the height of the cocaine era. It's very possible. We had a lot of stuff that was going on. I don't know if you guys have heard of Freeway Rick.
Yes, Rick Ross.
You're right, the real Rick.
The real Rick Ross, yeah.
Right. The stories about him are real. The drug trade out here, the drug trafficking was at a high. Murder rate was at a high, and drug dealers were carrying assault weapons. Man, they were carrying weapons that you see in South America.
God, dog.
I mean, people talk about AK. I learned a lot. People talk about AK-47. I took weapons off of people that were Korean-made assault weapons, German-made assault weapons, all kinds from all over the world. It was very dangerous, but it was very interesting. But the guns were just plentiful in South Central LA. And what's interesting about it, if you want to relate it to what's going on now, you have these white cops who are killing black people who are unarmed because they're afraid that they may have a gun. When I was working, and these are white, I worked with white cops too. I worked with very violent, brutal cops when I patrolled. We were very violent, very brutal, but we didn't kill anybody. We didn't. No one died in our custody. There was a saying. The way I was taught was that if someone tries to resist or tries to fight you, you don't just take them into custody. You beat them until they have to be booked at the 13th floor of USC Medical Center. Oh. And that's the hospital ward where people who are critically injured, that's where you take people who are arrested and critically injured. And that's how I was trained. You're supposed to send a message to people. And in fact, that's where my book, which is called One Time, that's where it comes from. Because people on the street say, you're only going to run from LAPD one time. You're going to get your butt whipped so bad, you're only going to run one time. And that's where the name came from, because gang members would see us and say, one time, one time. And that's where I came up with the name One Time, the story of a South Central Los Angeles police officer.
Wow.
But, to get back on track, I worked with some very brutal, very violent officers, but they were seasoned officers who had worked in South Central LA for years. And, we didn't shoot anybody. Nobody got shot within the 10 years I was there. I think there might have been 2 shootings. But, for the most part, we had proper tactics. We made arrests, and we arrested people with weapons, not unarmed people. Right. We're talking people with assault weapons who actually had them in their hands. And I write about that, how I always, sometimes I would second guess myself by giving somebody a half a second. Right. It's all about seconds. You give somebody a half a second, they'll drop the gun, as opposed to somebody who's just quick pulling the trigger. But a lot of these officers I see now are officers who, they just see something. They don't even see anything. They just suspect, and they open fire. And it's not because they really fear for their life. It's because of the opportunity. The opportunity has, come, and they meet all the criteria to shoot. Right. For a justifiable shooting. It's not morally right, but it's in the parameters of a justifiable shooting because they can shoot. And I've had conversations. I wrote in my book about conversations I had with some officers where I didn't pull the trigger, or my partner didn't pull the trigger, and maybe we roughed up somebody, and there's, we've had the dialogue. Well, if you beat up somebody, then you got to take a report. You get investigated by internal affairs. It's a long report that you got to write. You have to write a use of force report. You have to disclosure. When you beat up somebody, there's like a whole bunch of paperwork, right? Right, right. If you kill somebody, you don't do anything. The investigation is done by homicide, robbery, homicide. You just give your interview and, go home or go on leave for a little while and come back. So it's, it's easier if you just shoot somebody than beating up somebody. And so that was a discussion that, we had. many times about, you know, pulling the trigger quick as opposed to actually physically taking somebody in custody. You know, which one's easier, which one's messier, which one requires more time. We've had open dialogue about that. And so, you know, one of the things that's disturbing to me when I see these videos is they're not giving these people any opportunity to drop their gun or do anything, you know. And if you've ever had somebody ordered somebody to drop a gun or make a decision, you know, the people who come in contact with the police officers, a lot is going through their mind. And a lot of times they don't process stuff very quickly. They'll freeze first. You know, just the fright of coming across a police officer with a gun and you have one.
Right.
Or just anytime you see a police officer, you know, first thing your mind is in shock. You're like, whoa, you know, and you don't react right away. And I've experienced that myself. I mean, you know, one of the things I write about is that being a black police officer, you are a suspect first. Black police officer off duty is just a male black with a gun. And if you're approached by police officers, you're more likely to get shot than just the average person because you are armed, and they may just shoot you. And that's one of the things that you know, I've always mind, and you know, I've always thought about that. And as a police officer, I've always given people that I've stopped that consideration. Where you see these cops that they don't do that.
Wow. It's a lot to digest, man. It's just so free flowing the way you're putting it down. It's just going to be very interesting for me to see the comments after the fact as this particular upload goes out there into the world. And it's just so much. It's just so many angles, so much to ask. It's just so funny how you said you're a particular trainer or field training officer, I don't know what they would call it out there, mentioned that, you know, blacks don't belong there and women don't belong there. And the only reason the women are there, you know, for the favors performed between the cars. Did you really, I mean, did women really go for that there? Not to bring it back there, but it just, I'm like, I know some would, because I've observed that, you know, but how did they take that? I mean, did they just fall in line?
Well, you know, I don't have any knowledge to anybody specifically who, no one's ever confessed to me that they slept with somebody for a promotion or anything. But, you know, what I have heard is that, you know, from women, it's like you around a bunch of men that are in shape and, you know, for them, it's like a buffet.
Wow.
So, you know, I don't know if they're doing, you know, what they do for promotions, but they definitely enjoy their job. You know, there's really no difference between the men and the women. You know, they all do the same thing. Everybody messing around with somebody, you know. So, you know, I don't know if they're doing it for the favors. And what's interesting, though, you bring that up about women sleeping with cops to promote. I've never heard anyone confess to that, but I have heard male cops talk about having homosexual relationships with supervisors so they could promote.
Wow.
I've heard it from men.
Wow.
Definitely, I've heard it from men. And, you know, there's quite a couple of lawsuits where cops have sued for that sexual harassment, you know, between men, you know. So, you know, that's like a dark, you know, underground thing. There are a lot of gay men that are law enforcement. They're in law enforcement also.
Yes.
I had a partner who, a guy who I was in the academy with. We used to hang out, go drink, and he had all the women, right? All the women. Now I know it was a front. Right? He had all the women and everything. And, you know, we used to hang out. I had no idea, though. I thought he was a ladies' man and everything. And, I mean, I actually had no idea. And until his boyfriend came into the station and just told his business. Yeah, we worked at the same station. He got mad. His boyfriend came in there and just told all his business. All of them. because actually he beat him up. It was a domestic violence call. It was a domestic violence situation. The boyfriend had gotten beaten up, and he came into the station, and he just told everything. Everything. The officer ended up going to prison for domestic violence for 2 years from that.
Dang. You never know how, like Morpheus said, I can show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Right.
And all of that's swirled up, and there's the tension on the inside, the tension on the outside, the scandals, the manifestos. How did you feel? Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that I wrote about, one of the themes that I wrote about in my first book one time is that people think that the anger, the hostility, and everything comes from your training. It comes from the academy that you're taught that way. It really isn't. The frustration that you feel is internal. It comes from the job. It comes from not being supported, from being a pawn. I mean, the department will defend you if you beat somebody if the political climate says it's okay. Whenever there's a war on drugs, and the key words are war on drugs, war on gangs, when you hear that, you can do whatever you want to do. And politicians get elected based on that. They come to your roll call and they tell you, we need you to be more aggressive, we need you to be more assertive. Once you go out there, crack some heads for a while, they get elected, whatever. Then it comes a time where it's time to punish a police officer to show that you're tough on police officers. So police officers go through this all the time, and it's stressful. It makes you angry. It makes you confused. And so one of the things that I wrote about is that I never really understood my role as a police officer. What was I supposed to do? Was I not supposed to do anything? Was I supposed to be extra aggressive? Internal things that were going on with people I knew on the job who were getting punished because they didn't fit in. And it's all this stuff that happens before you get out on the street. And then once you get out on the street, you're angry, you're violent, and you really don't even know why. It's not even because you hate criminals. A lot of people say, well, you hate criminals, you hate dirtbags. You really hate yourself and hate the position that you're in. That's why you do the things you do. That's why you do the hostile, angry stuff, is because you hate yourself and how you have evolved into this brutal, angry cop, and there's nothing you can really do about it.
And it's a lot to process also. I mean, on so many different levels that I guess you didn't anticipate. And it's almost, you're stirring up things. There's things being added into your day that you have to be leery of. And then it makes you question yourself. And I guess there's a feeling where after a while, for many, they lose a sense of who they are or who they thought they were, and I guess they get into many decadent behaviors. And I've known many in the worlds that I've traveled through that I've run into in decadent parts of the world. Like, wow, I've known, let's just put it this way. We all know people. I know many prostitutes. I know many people who open up to me on the show, but just in my life, I've never had to go anywhere that way to pay for services, but people come to me and we talk. And I know people in adult entertainment and on different levels, and you'd be surprised. And I'm not saying that you would be surprised, but so many in law enforcement and in the judicial system, have reached out that way in a so-called safe manner and pay money. And aside from the obvious exchange of services, it's the things that they want to talk about, that their heart is burdened with so much that they want this person who falls under the title of doing what they do, that the world would look at in a lowly manner, that they would pick that person, not just for the services rendered, but because they feel they can open up because they have nothing to lose with them. And the things that they admit and the emotional tsunamis that they have to deal with. And like you said, in one of the articles that I read about you and your work, that the Christopher Dormer situation was something that was like, wow, this finally happened. This is long overdue. Not that you wanted it to happen, but you knew the factors involved. And it's just like seeing the factors involved that make a thunderstorm happen. but you see the clouds and it's dark, but a drop of rain didn't come yet. Then 2 hours later, here it is. It's like, well, it's about time. So with the whole Christopher Dormer situation, you had to know that what this man was going through was real, and you had to see how he was painted in the media. Although you don't condone anything being done to anybody, that reaction you can understand. Tell me your feelings about that a little more in depth.
Well, I definitely understand what he did, and for those who don't know who he is, he was a police officer that was fired. He was in the Navy Reserve. He had military experience. He was fired from the police department. He said they tried to ruin his life, and he went on a shooting rampage. He killed his attorney's, her boyfriend, and then he went on to shoot several more police officers. And so, he wrote a manifesto, and in that manifesto, he talked about how the police department tried to ruin his life, how the police department went after him unjustly, and because he told on his training officer. That goes back to that blue wall that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
He made a report, filed a report against his training officer for kicking someone. And so in the way, and this is crazy, the way law enforcement works, in most jobs, if you make a complaint against your coworker, they'll investigate it. And then if they don't find anything, they'll just say, oh, we didn't find anything. The investigation's over. But the way law enforcement works, the way LAPD works, is that if I say this officer kicked someone and they can't prove that he kicked someone, that means that I lied, that I lied to a supervisor. So I get fired for making a false statement to a supervisor. And that's what happened to him. Because he couldn't prove, even though they had witnesses kick this suspect, they still found that it didn't happen. They couldn't prove that it happened. So they fired him for lying to a supervisor for making a false complaint. So, he was upset about that. And LAPD was his whole life. Law enforcement, that's all he wanted to do was be a cop. And they took that away from him, and he felt that they ruined his career. So they ruined his life. So he decided to go on a killing spree. I know exactly what he went through. I know everything. Even more, my situation was even worse than his. When I wrote a book, I was under investigation. I was released. You have police officers who kill people, and they're released for 30 days with pay. All I did was write a book. I just wrote a book, and I was relieved for duty for 2 years.
Wow. Without
pay while they investigated my book. They kept coming up with more and more stuff. They went over every paragraph, and every paragraph I was interviewed for 14 hours. Every paragraph was an allegation of misconduct. Like I mentioned earlier, where my partner said that, the purpose of women on the job is to have oral sex with them. And so I wrote that in my book. And that was a allegation of misconduct because they asked me, they said, hey, did you tell your supervisor or tell a sergeant when this happened? And I said, no. They go, okay, well, one allegation is failure to report misconduct.
Oh, man.
So all through my book, I had over 300 allegations of failure to report misconduct. That dated back like 8 years. And so I had a total of over 300 allegations of misconduct from that, of not reporting misconduct. And those are methods and tactics that they use to keep you quiet so you don't talk. And they wanted to make an example. And that's what they do. They don't just want to fire you. As I mentioned before, they want to make an example. And they did that with Christopher Dorner. And they did the same thing with me, prior. They wanted to make an example. I was interviewed for 14 hours, which was horrible. Relieved from duty without pay. I actually got another job because I wasn't being paid, and so I didn't go to my trial board. Job abandonment. That's how I got fired because I had moved on.
They didn't like
that. But that's what they wanted,
and
that's what they wanted. And so they went and interviewed a bunch of people. They tried to indict me on criminal charges after I left the job. I was on I did a radio interview, and someone referred to me as Officer Bentley. and I didn't correct them. And they went to the DA's office and tried to file charges for impersonating a police officer. So they never stop. You know, when you speak against the police department, they're like the Terminator. They never stop until you die. You know, they just keep coming. You know, they feel no remorse, no regret. They just keep on coming at you.
And with technology,
Right.
now being what it is, it's so much easier to target you and harass you that way. I know many people who, you know, they know what I do and everything, and we're friends and everything, but they can't. They're like, listen, I'd love to speak out. And these are retired police officers. And they're like, listen, I'd love to kind of share things with you, but I can't because, you know, I want to keep my pension. And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm not knocking them. And I understand they know more into it than I do. But God, dog, they're scared of losing a pension that they already earned. And it's their right. I mean, this is their money. And they're scared of, so that shows me what they know that the department can do to them. I have someone on and they change their voice and we scramble their voice, and folks will still go up and down my friends list on Facebook and different social media platforms that I'm on and go that extra mile to find out. I mean, hell, I got regular people who go up and down my stuff and try to infiltrate my life. So you know that can happen if they feel that there's something, and there's a lot of information out here. People have taken videos with their phones, or they catch things here and there, but they will still seem to go after anyone who will open their mouth publicly and reveal, not even speaking out a lie, but reveal the truth of what goes on behind closed doors and brazenly in the public.
Right. And, you know, I see where some people want to know why police officers wait until they retire before they speak out. Some people, after they retire, don't say anything either because, you know, police officers are good at framing the regular person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's even easier to do it as to frame another cop on the job. And I'll give you an example of some of the stuff that they did to me. I had some complaints, and those complaints came back as unfounded, or they didn't happen. They were not sustained,
mm-hmm.
where the department did an investigation and they ruled that I didn't do the misconduct that it was alleged that I did. Well, after I wrote my book, they did what they call a military endorsement. So they went back 8 years and looked at all my personnel complaints. And they went and they said that every complaint I had, no matter what it was, they reviewed it and they said that it happened. They changed their findings on every.
Mm-hmm.
They changed their findings to say that I did commit that act. This is 8 years later. Now, the way it works is I couldn't get penalized for it. The way our collective bargaining works, a suspension for it. But if you look at my personnel file, it looked like I was this crazy cop that just committed misconduct all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they do. And then what they did was they would go back and say that this allegation happened, and then they went back and try to file charges, criminal charges on it. So they use all kind of undermining techniques and stuff
Mm-hmm.
to try to get you indicted and to harass you. And so that's why some cops never speak out, and that's why others wait until they retire.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is the way the stuff they put you through is just really worth it. I hate to say that.
Yeah, yeah. And most may not have the fortitude, the strength, the inner strength to be able to deal with it. And like you said, there were times when you were down and you were drained, you're feeling it. So you wouldn't put that on your worst enemy. I understand that. And
Right.
it's do you feel, I mean, yes, this is, I'm going to say, unfortunately, for the bad parts, the scars, but the good that you've done, but you've paid a price for it. Do you feel free from, and let me just say, someone just called into the chat room, mute your phone. I'm going to mute you. I'll open up later on to see if you want to say something toward the end when we do take statements and questions. So you're muted right now. Okay. So like I was saying, do you feel free of that, and I'm going to paint it this way, that dark cloud hanging over your head that you had to deal with? Or is it still something that's very much alive now? Or is this something that you've accepted that will never go away, but you can still move on with your life? Where are you right now, and how do you feel?
Well, I moved on a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I accepted that what I did was purposeful. You know, I had a lot of positive feedback from people. Police officers are really negative. It's negative police officers. I mean, police officers give me negative comments because what I'm saying is true.
Right.
And they understand it. They've experienced, they know it. To say there's no racist police officers on the job is incorrect. And how can someone say that? You know, so my experience that I tell people is, you know, it's straight on, you know, it's police stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Police officers understand it. I get a few, hate mails. Some people in the beginning used to tell me that I was delusional, that, I was making stuff up, that police officers aren't like that. But now you see it on video all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You see it in the media all the time. So unfortunately, that's validation for what I've been saying for years. If I had written my book, you know, last month or so, everybody in the country would know who I was. But unfortunately, you know, I wrote it years ago, and I have a little small cult following.
Mm-hmm.
But the things I said back in the day are still going on now. And so now I just sit back and I don't do a lot of interviews like I used to, mm-hmm. because it's out there. You know, my whole purpose is I wanted people to see the other side of law enforcement. I wanted them to see how it really was. It wasn't just all Adam 12 and, like stuff you see on television. And I wanted people to know what that experience was like. And now that it's out there, I don't feel compelled to do a lot of interviews and to talk about it and to try to persuade people. And I don't know if you noticed from my interview, mm-hmm. I'm not trying to persuade anybody. I'm not trying to make anybody believe me. I don't have to. You know, it's already out there. I'm just confirming, what you see, what you've seen in the media. You know, before I was just you could tell in the way I presented stuff, I was trying to persuade people and to believe me and so, to just look into what I was saying, just open your mind. But I don't have to do that anymore, so it's a relief. Unfortunately, it's a bad relief because it's out there. I wish I was wrong, and I wish things had changed. And it bothers me every time I see someone killed who's unarmed and someone perceived as being a thug just because of the way they dress, because they're wearing a hoodie or they're wearing their pants sagging and so forth. I have teenage boys. I have a 19-year-old and an 18-year-old. Mm-hmm. And I don't let them leave the house sagging and stuff. But, once they're out there, I don't know. I don't know what they do. I just know how I raised them. And it shouldn't make a difference. It shouldn't make a difference. To an experienced cop, it doesn't make a difference. But as I mentioned before, you have a lot of people who are in the black community, a lot of cops who are new, don't understand the culture. Mm-hmm. And, just to expand on that a little bit, the way it works in LA is if you want to be promoted, you have to work in a tough neighborhood. It helps if you work in a tough neighborhood. So it'll go in your personnel file that you worked in a tough neighborhood and you're able to make arrests and quick decisions. So you have a lot of officers who really don't want to be there, terrified of black people, who don't want to be in the black community, but they're only there just for a short time so they can write and so they can, in their personnel files or when they do an application to promote to sergeant or detective, they can say, oh, I worked in this black neighborhood that was really tough. And, so they have the perception that they are hardworking, hard-charging, brave police officers when they just, was just there terrified the whole time, making bad decisions. Right. And some of them, we communicate in the car before we actually drive off. And I've had white officers, some women, some male, tell me right off the bat is like, look, I'm only here because I want to promote to be a sergeant. I don't want to arrest anybody. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go near the project. If anybody tries to flag us down, I'm not going to look. I'm just going to wave like I'm in a parade
Yeah.
and keep going.
Yeah.
And I just want to do my time, my 1 year here, without any complaints or anything.
Hmm.
And they let you know that, and you got to respect it, because you can't really do the job by yourself. So you try not to work with that person, but they let you know up front, what they're all about. And so those type of people don't understand the culture, don't understand the job.
Right.
And so, those are the people that end up making the mistake. They end up shooting the black people with the hoodies, or the black kid who doesn't, comply right away. Those things that I see in the media now, those are things that I wrote about, and I see that now.
Right.
So there's really no, I feel liberated, unfortunately, and I don't feel like I have to go out there and push the agenda.
That's God, this is so much to think about. What you just shared. Wow. I wish. I'm going to take a peek into the chat room if there's any questions that anybody has to ask of our dear brother here, Brian Bentley. And I'm going to keep my eye there. So throw me some questions if possible. There was somebody who called who brought a little background noise into the room. I'm going to open the line up and really ask them if they had anything they want to ask you. I'm going to unmute that particular line right now. And it's a 707 area code. If you have anything that you wanted to ask, here's the time to do so. 707. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. It's okay to just call and listen. And there are a few other people who are here who have their lines open, but the phones are muted. I'm not shutting it down. I'm just evolving it into bringing their energy in to ask any questions of you. Ugh. And kind of like, it hit me like an avalanche, what you've shared, because I've read up all these things on you. I have a ton of things that I want to ask, but it's going to be one of those situations where it's like, after it's over, it's like, I should have asked this, I should have asked that. But I'm processing this stuff because what's so cool about it is that you're so calm and you're centered. Believe you, there's no question of your credibility when you speak because you've lived this. So do you get the hate mail, of course, but would you say a great percentage of people are really still in denial about what you have to share? And I also want to hear from you what your remedy is, if there's any, you know what I mean? From us getting shot down like this, is it something that the media is focusing on more? Then I feel I know the answer. I'm asking it this way for the people who are in denial later on. Is it something that's always been going on? Or is it something that the media focuses on more now? And if they are focusing on it more, why are they doing so? Do they want to provoke a race war? I threw a lot of questions at you, but just flow with that.
Well, it's not just happening now. It's been going on forever. I've heard the stories for years from other departments. It goes on all the time. I mean, even as a black person living in the black community, having black family members incarcerated, I have relatives who are gang members, and I've heard their stories. I never really visualized what they were talking about. I heard it, didn't like it. It sounded disturbing. But until you see these videos that you really, it's really heartfelt. It's like you're there, and it brings on a whole different dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Even as a police officer, and I see things, it's still shocking.
Right.
I know it exists. I know officers plant evidence. I know they, have bad shootings, and they come together and they work it out, talk amongst each other to get it justified. But just seeing it is just is very troubling. Even as a seasoned police officer, it's troubling. And the news loves it because they love that whole racial aspect. They would love a race war. And I did an interview on CNN, and I turned down a lot of CNN interviews
Mm-hmm.
because they want to focus on the racial aspect of this, and it is a racial it's a racial issue. However, as a police officer, and I see things, you know, from
Right.
both sides, I also see it as definitely a racial issue because, as I explained to you, I went through the whole racial thing. But there's also a mental illness part of it that concerns me as a former police officer. You know, officers committing suicide, officers depressed, using controlled substance. And that's another thing. I don't know how these other law enforcement agencies work, but the way the LAPD works is that there's a period of about 2 years that you get randomly drug tested. After that, you can smoke as much weed and crack as you want, unless there's a suspicion. You know, there's a suspicion, then they'll do a random check on you if something happens. But other than that, you know, you can just you can do whatever you want, right?
Wow.
And I've had what's interesting, you talk about the relationship between prostitutes and police officers.
Mm-hmm.
I've had prostitutes come tell me that they believe that certain officers were addicted to cocaine. You know, and to go back to what I mentioned before about you can't just, you know, make complaints on people because you'll get fired if it's not, if you can't prove it.
Right.
And, you know, what can you do? You can't really do anything. They'll tell you, oh, so-and-so, I know Officer so-and-so, we smoke crack together, you know, and you really don't know if they're just telling you that or
right.
if it's true. So, you know, most likely it is true.
Right. You hear it too many times.
You're right. You hear it too many times. And so, you know, there's a lot of issues. There's a lot of issues. There's issues with steroids. There's just a whole bunch of issues that go on that go along with the racial component.
Yes.
And stations like CNN don't want to hear that. They just want to focus on the racial aspect, the riots and so forth, so they can you know, promote a race war.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they really want to do that. And then another thing you mentioned about protest and how do I feel about that. One of the reasons I support Black Lives Matter is because as a police officer, I've been in tons of riots and peaceful marches. They don't work.
Right.
They really don't. As a police officer, peaceful march, a protest, I never felt that it didn't affect me at all. You know, I didn't feel any kind of way. As far as the LA riots, I was right in the middle of the riots. The riots was it was a very frightening moment because it was in my community and I cared.
Right.
But I made the most money I ever made in my life
over
in the
time.
LA riots.
God, I can imagine.
I bought a TV and paid off my car.
God.
And officers were talking about we should have a riot every year to subsidize our income. Then we wouldn't have to work overtime.
Dang.
You know, so those things are in favor of police officers. I applaud Black Lives Matter. Of course, as a former police officer, I don't agree with all their, you know, all the things that they target, but I do like the fact that they are assertive and that they are aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
That needs to be done. And I think, too, that we need to stop protesting and marching in our own neighborhoods. That doesn't have any kind of, I don't think that has is very impactful. I think we should go to communities, law enforcement communities. You know, every law enforcement agency has some type of community where law enforcement people get together and live together, you know, or firefighters all live in the same community. We need to find those places and do our marches there. You know,
there you go.
Have them think about what they're really doing. Have it hit home, you know. You know, we march all the time in our own neighborhoods, and it's like it doesn't affect anybody because they're not feeling it. Yeah, you know, it just affects our neighborhood. But if we take it to, you know, other places, they'll be able to, you know, feel that pressure.
That's right. That's right. And most of all, keeping our money in our pockets, you know.
Right.
Wow. We need to have our own media. We need to have our own everything. And
media is very important.
Yes,
very
it
important.
is.
What you're doing is very important because the major networks do not cover it. A lot of major networks now are taking stuff off the internet.
Of course, they're still, they go right to the internet, but they still pick and choose, and it has to fit the agenda. It's almost like right now where some would say, oh, they're rioting, or they're resisting, or the prisons across the country now. and nobody's talking about it. And I'm setting up to talk to different people on the inside across the country that can speak on what's happening. Of course, I can't speak to anybody who has a temporary residence there, but there's certain officers that I can speak to, and they have to speak anonymously, but I want them to come and speak about that. And I'm putting something together very soon with that. Because, suck from the wrong breast of the mainstream media. And if it's not happening there, in their mind, it doesn't exist at all. And that's not good at all. We need to be able to talk. Every community has their newspaper, has their radio stations. But when we try to have something of our own, oh, you're being racist, you're a separatist. And this is why I come out and say, yes, I am a separatist. I'm not against any white person or anything like that. Look, when you get sick, you separate yourself. You quarantine yourself until you get well, until you nurse yourself to strength. And we are in a sick state. You and I may not be there, but the most of us are. Many of us are. And if the least of us are, then I am. So we have to deal with our own, because nobody's going to come from the outside and deal with it. And this is why I applaud you for coming here today, man, and sharing this. And, I really want to see the responses on this, because you know what? It's bedazzling to me to hear it, but I know it. And I've known it all my life. You know what I mean? I may not have known the details of what you have shared, but we know what goes on. This is no shock to us. And it's only that we're having video now and things out in the open. And it doesn't always guarantee, things are going to be done right. But to actually see it, we have other so-called mainstream America that doesn't know us other than a comedy a show, a sitcom, or some buffoonery on TV. Now they see it's real and it's something to them like, oh my God, this can't be. Can't be. We've been telling you this all our lives, and you refuse to see it. But you know it from when officers were overseers. From way back in those days up until now, it's the same thing, the hunters of men.
Right. And I'll tell you something that's interesting in LA is that our community newspapers, a long time ago, from the local community newspapers about LAPD, police brutality, stuff like that.
Yes.
And so what LAPD did was they went and hired this expensive public relations agency.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they do now is they buy full-page ads in these black community newspapers, full-page ads, sometimes like 2 and 3 ads in the community newspaper, because these black newspapers, that's what they thrive on. They thrive on advertisement. And, if you're going to print negative stuff, the LAPD is going to take those ads back.
Right.
So they stopped doing that. So they stopped, telling the truth. They would ignore the controversial subject. And back in the day, they had these writers, and that's all they did was cover LAPD and beatings, and they gave you information that the LA Times didn't do. And now they don't do that anymore because they're afraid of having their advertisement pulled. And I mean, LAPD, the ones that used to be really anti-police, they have the most ads.
Right.
Full-page ads in a black newspaper, and LAPD ain't hiring black people. 3 full-page ads so they can hire 1 black person in the academy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's really just like a payoff. That's what it is. A legalized payoff. So they won't print any negative things about the police department. Well,
they haven't thrown any money my way, and I'm not compromising anyway. I'm doing my thing out of my own pocket and the help and donations that people send my way. Either or, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? We need more like that. I'm not putting myself on the pedestal. I'm just saying we have so many people out here who are so interested in becoming writers for these papers and talking about these foolish reality TV shows and all of this craziness out here and supporting these agendas, but they're not really ready to hit the pavement and tell the truth and get out there and do it on their own. That's what it's going to take, man, because it's stacked against us. And still, we're that little whisper in a whole stadium of people screaming against us. Not everybody's going to hear you because they have the money. But if you just continue to be that light, like you are with what you're doing, I'm quite sure that you have influenced and motivated people on different levels. Not to say, well, I'm watching his story, so I'm not going to become a police officer. But for those who are already there, they may take a different route. But it's got to be some positive coming out of it. Have you gotten any feedback on that level? And I'm quite sure you have, where somebody said, listen, you've helped me, or you've helped me not commit suicide. You've helped me not quit, or you help me not to go in, but I give my all in another arena. What's the feedback been like? And tell me some of the actual scarier, not that you're scared, man, because 3 guns, you know, you're ready, but the extreme, one into the other. What's the feedback been like? And there's a caller here that I'm going to open up. I think they have a question after that.
I've been getting feedback for years. What's interesting is, you know, once you write and you put something out there, a lot of times the results is different than what you expect. It's funny because people perceive my book as being like somebody who's given up, who was depressed. I guess people read into it. Somebody who's given up, and they equate it to somebody who's given up on life. You know, because I talk about how I lost faith in my community, and lost faith in the police department, and sometimes people, they interpret that as something really dark. I get a lot of emails from people who are suicidal, who've read my book many times. One person said they read the book once a month, keeps them going. You know, they know what it's like to want to give up and not have faith in the world or faith in life anymore. And that's surprising because that's not what I really meant. Maybe it is what I meant. I don't know, but that's how people, you know, interpret it. That's not how I presented it. And so then, you know, that's one thing that's very interesting. And then I get feedback from some people who said they were going to be a police officer, but they were on the fence. They just wanted to do it, you know, just to make money, just to pay the bills. But they realized that that's not, you know, that's not something that they really want to do. It's not worth the consequences. And I have other people who had said that they read the book, you know, didn't pay them. It was interesting. They didn't pay much attention to it. They became police officers anyway. And now they're going through the same stuff that I wrote about, the experiences, and they just wanted to let me know that I was right on, you know, for the things that I wrote. And then I get a few LAPD officers who initially try to attack me, but see, I'm not that far removed from the police department, and I still have a lot of friends that are on the job. So someone who reads something about me or hears something about me may initially write me with some negative stuff, but if they go to work, all they have to do is ask a couple of people, and you'll find somebody who's worked with me, who knows me personally, and that pretty much ends it all. And so, you know, the things I write about, you know, I was very aggressive, violent, quick-tempered, and not just with suspects, other officers as well. Everybody was the same to me. My partners were no different than gang members or suspects I saw on the street. I felt no difference towards them. I could easily go off and hurt them as I would somebody on the street. I had no boundaries. There was no limitations. When I was angry and I felt strong about something, you know, I was ready to do something physical about it. And that's the reputation I had as a police officer, and that still lingers on, you know, on the department. And the fact that I'm calm all the time, and you know, I'm not yelling and not very boisterous, but the fact that, you know, I still have a reputation on the job, so I don't hear much. And, they're not going to try you. And I still live down the street, and a lot of them know that. And
they know that.
They have, I could be there. You know?
As calm as your voice is, trust me, they know. And those are the ones that will do. You know, I think I have, I'm going to go down the list right here. I'm going to open up this line, 347. I'm not sure if you want to speak, but it's the only 347 that I have on the line. And there's other ones I'm going to go down the line and see if there's any questions that you have. A New York caller, 347. If you want to speak or ask a question, your line is open. If not, I'll give you 3 or 4 seconds. I'll close up and move to the next one. 347, your line is open. Okay, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Next one is 318, which I believe is the line is open. If you want to, yes. Would you like to ask a question?
Hey, how y'all doing, man?
All right, tell us about yourself. Where are you calling from? And even though I know,
I'm calling from Louisiana, man. I kind of had a 2-part question for y'all, man. First of all, I say peace and prosperity to you both, and I appreciate the brother, for coming forth,
Yes.
exposing a lot of truth.
Yes.
But I just kind of had two questions. The first one was, I didn't catch the beginning of the live stream, so I'm not sure if he already went over this.
It's okay. You can ask it again. Yeah.
No, if he could. Yeah, I want to know if he can kind of give us, as young black men, tips on surviving encounters with these type of policemen. And the second part is, just I know a lot of people say all cops aren't bad, but they got to understand the frustration that we look at it, because it's like, if all of them aren't bad, why aren't they, like, Mr. Bentley coming forth when they know corruption is going on in their department? Because I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure about the size of all departments, but if 10 from one department would step forward, the people would have no problem backing them. If they were in fear for their safety or whatever, So I just like to say that, man.
Yeah. To answer your question about why they don't come forth, it's interesting because black police officers a lot of times feel the same way as white police officers. It's how they were taught, how they were brought up in that police culture. A lot of my friends, I have a lot of black police officer friends, and a lot of them don't see anything wrong with what they see on the television, the shooting. They feel the same way. Well, that person didn't comply right away, and they got what they deserved, and we don't have to wait until somebody stops moving. As long as the shooting falls within those parameters and they can't justifiably pull the trigger, they feel that officers should. They don't feel that a police officer has to take an extra half a second and drop their weapon or to surrender. And they feel that any non-compliance is a death sentence. They feel that right away. And I mentioned that, as a black person who has kids and so forth, who's had experience with the police, I know what it's like when a police officer draws down on you. I know that there's just a couple seconds of shock, where you don't know what to do. You think about what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and it's hard to just comply to what they say. And a lot of times you'll have officers, you have 2 or 3 officers yelling different commands at the same time. Some will say, don't move. Some will say, get on the ground. I've had to straighten my partners out about that. I'm like, listen, we need to all be on the same page. How we were trained. And some will say, keep your hands up, don't move, get on the ground. And the suspects are looking like, what am I going to do? And, they don't know what to do. And I think that's some of the situations that I've seen where, suspects really don't know what they're doing, what to do, and someone shoots because he's doing what the other officer does. And so, it really doesn't matter if you're black. I mean, it does matter if you're a black police officer or if you're a white police officer, but a lot of times it just doesn't make a difference. They feel the same. And even good police officers, for some reason, which I haven't been able to really put my finger on it. But even though police officers know that someone did a bad shooting or that something's wrong, they will still defend that officer. They will come up with an excuse and a reason, even though they wouldn't have done it themselves. I asked some of my partners, I said, would you have shot? Yeah. Right. I said, hey, would you have shot that guy in that situation? They're like, no, but I see how somebody would, and I'm not going to condone them for doing it. I wouldn't have done it, but the fact that they did it, I don't think they're wrong. So I don't think you're going to ever get a group of people to stand up and support or condone what a police officer does. And to even take it further, like with LAPD, we have an organization for Black Police Officers Association. We only have 300 people in there, and that's sworn police officers and civilians. With 300 people, you really can't even do much with that. We don't have the money to hire attorneys. They don't have the money to organize events and stuff like that. It's more of a social organization, as where the police league has 10,000 members and charges the membership dues are like twice as much. So they hire attorneys to do their bid, and they do lobbying and so forth, and that's all designed, and that's why that's one of the reasons why law enforcement agencies don't hire a lot of black people. Well, they can't unite, they can't get together, they can't protest, they can't really do something significant if they were willing. And then to answer your question about what you can do, black person being confronted with the police. First thing, you just got to really take a deep breath and relax. Don't let any emotion guide you, because I know as soon as the police officer stops you and you're not doing anything, you get pissed. And I know, I was a police officer, and I would drive through the suburbs of Culver City and get pulled over all the time, all the time, as a police officer, show them my ID, and they still wouldn't believe that I was a police officer. They would rub my badge and turn it upside down and shake it, blow on it, like they didn't believe it.
Stuff.
They didn't believe it was real, And so, you got to control your anger and your frustration, and you just have to relax and listen carefully and do exactly what they say. And cross your fingers that, actually don't cross your fingers. Keep your fingers open.
Right.
So, you just have to do what they say that you do. And the whole thing is that police officers always say they're in fear. Everything they do is fear for their safety. So you have to be mindful of that. Everything you do, you have to think, am I scaring this white dude? Do whatever you can not to scare the white dude. Right.
This is something. They're the police, and we have to be careful not to scare them. And they have the legal right with the weaponry and stuff. We had two other people pop in. We have people popping in and popping out on my switchboard. 347 popped out, popped in. Let me find out. 347, do you have anything you want to say?
Oh?
Yes, hello. How are you? Who's speaking? Welcome to the Lancescurv show.
Hi.
How are you?
Hello. Thank you for taking my phone call. This is me, Melanin.
Oh, Melanin. Yes, I was waiting for you. I didn't know the number. I'm gonna log it in, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
Talk to us.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate you taking my question. Do you agree with the stop and frisk? Now, this started in New York City, and I had family members who had to put up with this stop and frisk. Now, Trump said something about it a few nights ago. He thinks it should be nationwide. Do you agree with that? And who will it affect if it goes, if he was, let's say that he was president?
Well,
Hello? Is anybody
that's it.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Can you hear me? That's interesting
yes,
that
I sure can.
you brought. That's interesting you brought that up, because when I was a police officer in the 90s, the police chief was Daryl Gates, and we had this thing called Operation Hammer. Operation Hammer was where they brought all the police officers in from the valley, all over the city, into one area in the black neighborhood, and they stopped everybody. They searched everybody. They wrote people tickets for spitting on the sidewalk, standing on the sidewalk. They did everything to try to shake people down, and it was to deter crime. It was create lawsuits, okay? And a lot of times what will happen is you'll have police officers who try to pretend like they're tough, like they're bad, and they'll see someone who's a known gang member, someone who's a known ex-con, and they'll ignore that person and go stop somebody on their way to church, somebody on their way to school, because they want to feel like they're actually working and doing something when they're really afraid to actually who are the problem. If you've been in the community and worked as a police officer just a short time, and you have the confidence from the people in the community, they will tell you who the criminals are, who's selling the drugs,
right,
who has the guns. You'll know all the information that you need to know. You don't need to stop everybody. Gang members tell on each other. They'll tell you what rival gang members have guns and plan to shoot people. You can get all the information you want by just talking to people on the street. You don't have to stop and frisk everybody. When I was on the job, I had more information than I could process. Everybody was telling people. I see people at the grocery store. They were telling me where the drugs were being sold and who was selling them, who their mother was. You had all the information you needed to know. You don't need to stop and frisk people. All it does is make people angry. And like I said, they pick on the people who are safe. They know aren't the problem. They just do it as a deterrent. I had a partner, and he would stop people, and I would say, you know what? There's it just drove by. I said, we're stopping these people over here, but there's a car full of gang members that just drove by. And the message here. So they're more inclined not to come back, and they're more inclined to go home and take their guns. That way we don't have to do it and get into a shooting.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a show of force. And that's the mentality. Is if I harass an innocent person, the person who's guilty and has a gun, next. And they won't, the logic is they won't carry a gun next time. So really don't want to make the arrest and don't want the hassle and get into that dangerous situation. Stop and frisk stuff is just a bunch of propaganda. The whole thing I was saying before, you always create a war on something, war on drugs, war on gangs. That way, casualty or excuse for people who are not involved, getting hurt.
I have a part two to your question. To my question. Now, it was also said, now suppose this was to go nationwide. What we saw in New York City, captains, if you will, would say to their police officers, if you do not do this, there's repercussions. You're going to have to suffer the consequences of not stopping and frisking innocent pedestrians, if you will, walking while black. That's what I saw. It would be that you wouldn't be promoted and have enough tickets to give to the civilians that would count against you. So how would this affect the police organization worldwide? Not worldwide, nationwide.
Well, we had that similar situation several times in the so
You're breaking up. You're breaking up, Brian. You're kind of clipping off. I don't know. Just kind of keep your mouth close to the phone. And let me just say for everybody who's watching, I'm kind of being messed with technically over here. So if there's any abrupt cutting off, it's not because of anything that I did. But, with shows like this and the truth that Brian is revealing here, I kind of expected it. But certain things are happening on my main computer, like they won't go away. And it's like, okay, I'm kind of staying in one spot. I'm not going to delve too deep and mess up and hit the wrong thing. But that's what's going on right now. But just continue on. And I'm going to watch the chat room on my other computer and the screen on my other computer and give me any feedback if you have any problems. But continue on as normal. And hopefully we can get through this without any incident. But go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry.
I hope you can hear me better.
Yeah.
But the same situation happened in several times, not just once, but several times, where officers ordered to write tickets, ordered to pull people, fight people on the street, and officers did it. Some refused, and they had things written in personnel file. Some were given suspension day for years, and eventually they won a huge settlement. Now that happened like 3 times. After they won the settlement, another thing continued the same thing. And so I see that happening throughout the nation, that type of thing, because that's a violation of civil and
right.
It's actually against the law. Tickets and things like that. You can't have any kind of a quota or bonuses for, and is a big federal lawsuit or some type of federal play. A lot of times law enforcement, they just throw things out there. You know, they don't. Something goes wrong. Concussions themselves, captains, chiefs, whatever. They don't. You know, they don't. When there's a lawsuit, they don't get any money, so they just throw things out there, and at officers' expense, at the public expense, and this is being a huge problem.
Your audio is clipping in and out, Brian, but I don't think it's your fault. This main computer here I have the show based through, you know, with the live stream is going haywire, but we're going to run it until the wheels fall off. But, you know, I just want to let people know that even in the future, when they listen to this, that, you know, we heard, you know, we can get what you're saying. Annoying because it kept clip, you clip out. And I really don't believe it's anything on your end because of what's happening over here. It's really trying to make me shut everything down because, but this is definitely something external. And I'm reducing one of the screens. It keeps coming back. Why now? In a way that I'm not used to. So I can't shut it down right now because we have the show running through it. But
I'm available anytime.
Yeah,
you know?
but see, yeah, I don't want this to be the reason why it ends. But I don't want to sit here and superior that you're bringing in your presentation and let something as minor as the audio, which is really not my fault. This is definitely something external. The way I feel now, it's like, okay, you know, you have dinner, you have guests coming over, especially when you don't have roaches, you know? So
right.
That's what it is. And Melanin, I appreciate you calling in and the chat room and everything. And I'm not trying to end it, but put it down because this computer's like really going haywire. And if I correct the problem, I might just end the show. And I don't want to do that. But Brian, what I want to do, I actually want to do a part 2. And you're part of the family now anyway. And not even just a part 2, but a continuous dialogue with you because of who you are and your experience and what you bring as far as your expertise, right? Because there's so much happening out here. So after people hear this particular conversation that we had today, they're going to make comments, they're going to ask questions, and it's going to pop off in my head. I'm going to say, hey, you know, I forgot to ask you this. So I know you probably have a busy schedule, but I'd like to do this with you again. And we all know, unfortunately, that there are always going to be things that are going to be happening in the media, focused in the media, but outside in the world where it's going to be another person getting shot. This is what's happening more and more. Yeah. It's not going to be something in 6 months, but I'd like to do something with you within the week, within the next 2 weeks, if your schedule permits. But I told you earlier on that I said, hey, we're going to talk until the wheels go off and you wrap it down. But because of these seeing here, I'm probably going to want to wrap it down to keep this dialogue intense without any interference. And I'd like to be the one to end it as opposed to some nutcase who's a hacker somewhere just trying to mess up our conversation because of the truth that you bring. Give it another few minutes, but anything inside of you right now for this particular point, and we are going to do this again, that you want to share. Any other callers? There's one person from New York again that called in. If there's anything you want to ask Brian, ask him, or you can just, you know, chill out here and listen. But kind of like, let's bring it down to a nice, smooth, soft landing and get another 5-10 minutes, but to a close, and we will continue this. And I'll probably give you a call right after.
Appreciate that. I appreciate, you know, having me when, you know, to be here.
You know, wow, this is really clipping bad. So I don't know what it is. You know, I'm going to make one last ditch attempt to see if we can stop the clipping. I'm going to call you back right now and see if if a reconnection or as a phone line is concerned, but it may just be what I'm seeing here on the computer in front of me. So I'm going to hang up right now and call you back in 5 seconds and, you know, pipe you back in. All right. Hold tight, everybody, because like I said, these things will happen. And, okay, let me add a call. These things will happen. and at least we got through the majority of it without any incident. But once the clipping started to happen and these screens started to pop up out of nowhere, you know, it's not like I'm watching porn on that computer. I don't have any on any of these computers. So, okay, I believe we have him pipe back in. Let's see how the sound is then. Let's just kind of wrap it down.
Okay, how's the connection now?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Okay.
Let's continue on. But let's still give it another 10 minutes because, like I said, with what I'm seeing on the computer, I don't know if this thing will just snuff out anyway. Definitely want to get back with you probably next week or whenever you're free, because this upload is going to raise a lot of questions. And there are going to be a lot of, you know, unfortunately, foolish statements made. So you can deal with these things and just squash it because of who you are. Just so right now for the next 10 minutes. And I give you the floor.
Well, you know, I thank you for the opportunity to have me on your show. It's good to have people.
Thank you.
To listen to what's going on and want to make a change and want to make a difference in our communities, who are socially responsible and want to see improvement in our communities. Enforcement is needed. That's the reason I became a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't what I expected, still isn't. I don't want to give up on it because we do have, you know, people in society who have issues and make life uncomfortable for us. They need to be handled. And so, you know, I would like to see something, you know, something take place so that we can stop having all these killings to it. As I mentioned before, I'm not a big fan of peaceful protests. That's not saying that I'm for. I think it should be more assertive and targeted, you know, differently, in a way that, you know, people think about it, that our politicians and lawmakers think about, you know, what it is that needs to be done. Because right now they don't care. Things are playing out the way they're designed.
Mm-hmm.
First of law enforcement is to protect the rich and the upperly, you know, middle class people, and to keep the upper class, you know, in their space. Out, you know, that's the whole purpose. So it's designed. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It instill fear in people. They operate out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to fear them. They want you to be afraid of being shot. That way, it makes their job. They think it makes their job a lot easier. And so, you know, you're getting the results that, you know, that they're getting the results that they want. You know. And so I just hope that somewhere down the line that there's change and that we can come together and we won't have to see these videos. You know, for a while there, I thought we were at that place. We didn't see any. And then all of a sudden, it just came back as, you know, with a vengeance. We start seeing one every single day. There was a period where we didn't see anything for about 3 weeks every day. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I hope it stops. Well, I thank you for the platform.
Oh, yes. And Brian, I did say we were going to wrap it down, but I will go a little longer because it seems like this problem here has kind of been quarantined. So, you know, you just gave your wind down speech, but we have another person, Brother Mad Guns, who wants to ask a question of you. And I've been trying to keep it so professional, you know, for the whole show. I got a plate handed to me, a beautiful plate of vegetables, you know, from Mrs. SCURV's kitchen. I put it to the side, and I didn't want to sit here. We have a lot of new people who are watching. And I don't want folks to say, look at him, he's a slob. He's sitting here eating on camera, but this is what we kind of do. I kind of wanted to respect the new people that came here, but, you know, this is a mom and pop operation. And just like the old barbershop I used to go to when I was a kid, you know, the wife would they lived upstairs. The wife would come down with the plate of food, and I don't care if half of my afro was cut down, he was going to eat. Doing this, and I wasn't trying to stop it because I wanted to eat, because folks know I'm going to eat anyway. But you know what? I'm going to have Brother Mad Gun speak with you, so we'll let it flow for even a little longer, if that's okay. But of course, we're over the hump, and I want to keep it quality. So, you know, go ahead, Brother Mad Guns. And for the new people, listen, Brother Man got to eat. And I'm right here. And, you know, I'm the only one being seen, so I have to eat so perfect and proper in front of everybody. But go ahead, Mad Guns, and
All right. I'd like to say peace to everybody and peace to you, Brian.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Peace to you.
Okay. I'd like to for your bravery in what you're doing. I'm ex-law enforcement myself. I wasn't a street cop, so I wasn't NYPD, that's for sure. But I probably have like 3 questions for you. The first question is, can you share any thoughts or any insight on the ZELLE Ford situation? From, August 2 years ago.
Right. I don't have any personal experience from that. From what I've read and from what I've seen and from what I've heard, it seems like the typical scenario where police officers jump out their car to rough up gang members, which they do all the time, specifically in 77th Division, which I mentioned earlier. Cops want to go because they heard that there's gang members and that's where all the action is. Gang officers have a habit of jumping out of cars, tackling gang members, just for the enjoyment, just for the thrill of it. And so what it seems like the situation where somebody, and then you realize your gun is unholstered, and your gun comes loose. And when your gun comes loose, you panic. You panic. Officers say, gun, my gun is out, my gun is loose. Shoots them. And then they make up a story where the person was going for their gun. Gang members, and particularly in that division, don't need to go for an officer's gun. They got guns. They got plenty of guns. They have their own guns.
Exactly.
They don't need a police officer's gun. Getting a gun off the street is easy, way easier than getting a police officer's gun. And to me, it just seems like a story that was made up, the way they did. And I always get a little leery when I hear police officers say someone is going for their gun, because I've been in fights. I've been in some serious fights with people, armed, and actually with someone who is reaching for my gun. And I've never felt the need to pull out a gun and shoot them. If they're reaching for my gun, why do I need to pull my gun out and shoot them with the gun that they're reaching for? FBI statistics say that a lot of officers who are killed by gunfire are done with their own weapon. Once they pull them out. Once you pull out a weapon, you have to make a decision. Where you're going to fire it. You already made that decision. You've already crossed that line.
Absolutely.
And so, you don't draw your gun. And in most cases, people generally don't go for your gun like that. And so, just to me, it sounds suspicious. And I don't buy what the officers are saying. The witnesses have already been discredited. So I don't see a good, resolution from it. I don't see the officers being reprimanded or being fired or indicted or anything. I think it's just going to go down as another justified shooting. Cops' word against a gang member's word, against other gang members' word, against other people who have warrants and records. Unfortunately.
All right. I got a couple other questions for you, if that's all right with Lance.
Oh, sure. I'm throwing down over here. Thank you all.
Yeah,
for the culinary commercial break.
I actually got like 4 questions, if that's all right with you, Brian.
Go ahead.
That's fine.
All right. Especially as I'm on the East Coast, and not everybody lives in California. Could you shed some light on the Mexican influence? Because I hear it's really, really, really big.
Well, that's interesting because you mean just in general, law enforcement, LAPD?
In general, whatever comes out of your brain.
Mm-hmm. Well, LAPD is predominantly Mexican now. I mentioned earlier that they had a police. They had a graduating class from the academy last week. There was one black in there, and I think 90%.
Cut a clip it again.
Hispanic, and they're only 3% white that they're hiring. A lot of people run the LAPD federal. So many Hispanics on the job, and it's because of the race, Hispanic, but the influence is among the most of the schools are Hispanic now. A lot of blacks are moving to LA, and then what's interesting is that blacks, a lot of the whites who were living moved back in to Los Angeles. It's just a whole different change because of the rules that they have. Or you have a lot of white people that are blacks are moving out, and so pretty soon be white and Hispanic until Donald Trump is white, right?
Let me just say, Brian, your phone is definitely clipping really bad, and it was mentioned in the chat room that your phone is probably tapped. Do you believe that?
It's possible. I believe, but possibility.
Right,
it's
right,
possibility.
Right. Because it's clipping now again.
I don't know. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. Can you hear me?
Probably 40%, and we have to patch it together because you'll start a word, and then it will clip, and we can kind of hear and put together what you're saying. But again, my thing is having a great listening experience afterward, not just during the show.
You cell phone number. Try my cell phone number.
Yeah, let me try that.
Okay.
True.
All right.
Okay. I'm gonna call you right back. Okay. All right. While we're here, I'm digging for this number.
Man, I ain't feeling you right now. You eating.
Totally vegan.
Everybody hungry. You know what I'm saying? You do these shows, man. Sometimes, it's so engrossing, man, can't really do anything. I'm hungry. Everybody hungry.
Right.
You know what I mean? But this is definitely interesting. Definitely interesting.
Yeah. And we're going to have more like this. And like I said, they will.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised we are with no issues. Okay, here we go. We're trying to simple. You're here, Brian.
Okay.
Let's try this now. Let's see how much capabilities they have, if that is the case. But go ahead with your answer that you were given, and I'm going to continue to smack down here. Mad Guns will hold it down, and I'm going to step away for a second because got to make room here. Too much information. But go ahead, man.
I hold it down. Yeah. To answer the question, I was saying that we have whites that are moving back into LA, blacks are moving out into the suburbs, Metro Rail, and because traffic is so congested and so bad on the freeways that it's hard to get around, and we have a lot of people who live far out are starting to move back into the city. As far as law enforcement is concerned, the LAPD is predominantly Hispanic now. And there's only
that's what I heard.
Yeah. And they're only hiring like one black person per capita. So, my projection is that probably in the next 25 years, they'll probably like 2% black on the job. So.
Wow. That is definitely deep. I really want to know, where did you get your strength and resolve from when the training officer said that to you?
Well,
for you to keep going and not punch him in the face.
Well, I was angry. I was extremely frustrated at the time. But the whole thing is that I didn't want to look like a failure, or some of my friends who knew I was going into the police department understand, what you're going through, and they will hear you say you don't want to do it, and they'll automatically think that, oh, you just couldn't take it. It's just too tough for you. So it was always a battle with, I didn't want to give up. I didn't want to give in. I knew what they were doing. I know they wanted to belittle me and cause me, to resign, but I didn't want to give them that satisfaction. And I know probably about 4 other black police officers who resigned, who went through the same thing. Some in my class, some in the before me and after me. I know they resigned because they didn't want to put up with it. And so I was just determined not to give up, to keep pushing, to keep fighting. And also, too, I thought that it would get better. I just saw it as being, it had to get better. It couldn't get worse. And it couldn't be the same. And I just knew that, that eventually that it had to get better. It is that when you're a rookie, you don't have any rights. The league does not protect rookies. You don't get that until after you pass your probationary period and become what they call a P2. Then you start getting benefits of being, of the protective league of the union. So it's basically, it's like a bully. They bully you because you don't have any recourse. And so, I was really affected by that. What it did was it made me angry. It made me bitter. But once I passed my probationary period, I was a totally different person. I was very angry. You couldn't even look at me wrong. I was one of those black cops that they were like, wow, he's really angry, And what's funny about it, what's interesting about it, is that when I was a rookie, I was laid back. I was a little, kind of passive. Yes, sir. I did everything I was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
A patrol officer past that period, I was that way for a little bit. I finally got fed up. And one day I went off on everyone. I was just angry and hostile, and I thought that it was going to draw negative attention.
Uh-huh.
White officers were like, wow, man, I didn't know you had it in you. I didn't know you would like that. We need to start working together. You got that edge. That's what they wanted. That's what they wanted to see. They want to push you to that point where you're just angry and you become like them.
Yeah, I never did the probationary period. Here I am as 1 year as well. I never liked it. I never really thought it was fair. You can come up across a sergeant, you know what I'm saying, or a commanding officer that just don't like you, and you can get fired. I never thought that was fair, and that's not really fair that you put 6 months of your life into something just because somebody don't like you. You know what I mean? So it's kind of weird, and I really wonder why that's in there. And you don't have anybody to fight for you. You have literally no process to defend yourself.
You're absolutely right. And my problems with the police department, there was a point where I got to where I was accepted as one of the guys. I didn't have any problem. I was well liked. I could have any assignment, but I couldn't deal with watching other people go through things. And like my mother always said, my biggest problem was I couldn't mind my own business, and that was one of the downfalls to the job, because I would see other people who didn't conform and who wouldn't conform. Some of them couldn't conform. Like dirt. They treated them like dirt.
Wow.
People who were good, sound police officers. And I had a sergeant come to me and say, I want you to work with this girl, and I want you to write her up for everything she does. Anything wrong, I want you to write her up.
Wow.
I want you to give her an unsatisfactory rating for this day. So I said, I'll look at her. Great. She had a whole bunch of unsatisfactory ratings, and I worked with her. She was great. And I told him I wasn't going to do it. And, he was pissed. And I said, you should have known better than, to ask me to do that. She's not unsatisfactory, and I'm not going to do it. And she was assigned to me, and they took her off that day and put her with somebody else because they felt that she just didn't exhibit the mentality characteristics of what they thought a police officer should have. And, they wanted to get rid of her just because of that.
All right. My next question is, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the Colin Kaepernick situation? And part B to that one is, do you think that it's possible in any way, shape, or form that he's in any kind of danger?
I think he's in great danger. People are really fanatics about this issue. I don't think people concerned with military veterans. I don't think the cares about people who fought and died for this country. I just think it's a slogan. It's something that a lot of people say, but they don't truly mean it. Mm-hmm. People who are in the military who commit suicide, every 22 days someone commits suicide, proper benefits, Fargo repossessing veterans' cars, and if you hear this stuff about how we love and support our veterans, but you don't see it. You don't really see it. Half the people you see. Half the people you see on the side of the road panhandling are veterans, and also veterans make up a large population of our prison population. So this whole love, I just don't buy it. And so I think
that's something that is really, really, really grinding my gears. All these people, obviously now they're, connecting the flag to the troops. And what I find hilarious is all these people are talking. I really want to ask them, well, what are you doing about Veterans Affairs? You know what's going on in the VA. This, everything that's been going on in the Veterans Administration has been going on for decades. Help, they're not getting the kind of care that they need. But, y'all want to talk about the troops, but what are you doing? Are you contributing? Are you talking to your congressmen or your senators about, improving the conditions of veterans? But, that's America for you right now. That's right. Really America for you right now. And I find that to be really, really annoying.
Right. And I feel the same way. And they're talking about him not standing for the national anthem. Stands during the national anthem. That's the best time to get a hot dog, is when they're singing the national anthem and doing the flag salute. The concession stands aren't closed. People aren't paying attention. People are on their phones. I just think that the whole situation is overblown that way. As far as him protesting, I mentioned it many times. I don't believe that passive has generated a lot of dialogue. I'm hoping people will reevaluate the situation and make some changes. I'm thinking maybe it'll affect the younger generation more, to look into the situation of America and make decisions on that. But I don't believe in passive protest. As a police officer, I've been involved in a number of protests and demonstrations, and like I said, it never, to me. We have people march all the time for police beatings, people incarcerated. It was just another day for us. Nothing changed. During the LA riots, like I said, I made the most money I ever made in my life. It was a horrible experience, but I got paid very well for it. And officers were saying that we need a riot every year to subsidize their income. So I just don't know what the answer is. Like I said, I would like for people who protest, like Black Lives Matter and so forth, I support them. I would like to see them do something different, innovative, and that will stir up the pot for those who don't feel like they're involved.
Right. All right, I got about 2 other questions for you. What percentage, to the best of your knowledge, what percentage of, when you were on the job, what percentage of the police officers do you say were also military reservists? A lot of times that blurs the lines because, policing and being a soldier are 2 different concepts. And that really blurs the lines. I think it's very difficult to shed, being a soldier when you come back home. The problem, I know it's not, a large percentage, but it's enough to make a difference.
Yeah, it's a large percentage for LAPD, a very large percentage.
Wow.
Most of my partners were Marines. A lot of them had done combat, a Gulf War, and it's 2 different things. It's definitely two different jobs that you have to do. But also it adds stress. You have military vets who are, going through the stress of being in combat, being in the military, to law enforcement, and they are subjected to, so they haven't healed, and then they just go into another situation, and it makes it even more damaging. And also, then they get called back during going to Iraq, and they're going back, doing different tours and being called back, and messes up their life. And a lot of them are withdrawn. A lot of them don't talk about what they've done. You can just see that there's, something going on. They don't return the same, return as the same as when they left. And they're very quiet, and they don't talk about, they're not open about what they experienced or what they've done. Added stress, it makes the situation for everyone more dangerous, and more dangerous to themselves.
We have to have
all right.
I just want to say we have to definitely focus in on having a show for the veterans, the real deal, not the fake whatever, but to bring in, like, have you guys here, bring in other people, and I want to do it where I advertise it heavily so that people can kind of filter in and say, hey, I want to be there. 2 cents, because like you said, Mad Guns, they talk one thing, but then when you see in actuality that there's no real love there, because things wouldn't be that way for them when they return. Where's the love? It's like that old song, where is the love?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? They are homeless. They have the emotional and mental issues that, of course, you go into that environment, you're going to come back with that. I mean, heck, it's hard enough living in this country and not even being a veteran. So you're going to get that over there. And then the lack of treatment and care, it's really pathetic. And I hate to say it this way, but I'm just so glad I never went. I'm just so glad I never went. Not that I was really even considering it, but I'm just so glad that I would really be, and who knows what I would do. You know what I mean? But go ahead with your final questions, Mad Guns, and we'll still kind of bring it down nicely. And we got to do this next week within.
Yeah, I think I got another 2 questions in the statement.
Sure.
This may sound like it's out of left field, but I know what I'm talking about. Trust me here. Do you think that police, police in general, but especially in your experience, knowing the people that out there, knowing the cops that you work with, do you think that police are also hitmen?
I would not put it past police officers. As I mentioned before, friends, partners who were involved in the Rampart corruption scandal, and that was where cops were taking money off of drug dealers, selling the drugs, and 2 drug dealers were shot. One was killed, and one was paralyzed by an officer who had a conflict with these drug dealers. So they never proved that the shooting was unjustifiable or anything, but it was well known that that person was executed by this cop, because of the drugs that they were dealing. And also, too, LAPD had years ago, they arrested a sergeant who was arrested by undercover officers, and he was an alleged hitman. And I think he did about 4 years in prison. They arrested him on duty, where he got a contract to kill someone, accepted money, and they actually was on duty. They never proved that he had actually carried out any other hits, even though he was tied to some other ones, but they never proved it, and he was only convicted on that thing. But, it's definitely possible. Can't put anything past police officers. And then I don't know if you guys have done any research on some of the things that I've written, some of the things that I've discussed, but in L.A. there was a detective, an undercover detective, who killed a black off-duty cop. The black off-duty cop's name was Kevin Gaines, and he worked. He was he was dating, and so it was alleged that
Wow.
that was a contract hit. Even the officer made a statement who killed him and made a statement that it was a contract hit. But the LAPD never followed up on it. So the elements are there. They're all there to support what you say, and it wouldn't pass me. Even though I have no direct knowledge of it, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Wow. Right. For your coming out and saying the things that you said in your book, I do intend to buy it. It's, the topic interests me greatly. Do you have any concerns for your own safety for coming out? And like I said, even though I don't know the extent of, what you've revealed, without reading your book, do you have any concerns?
I don't have any concerns. I had concerns initially when I first wrote and published my book. I don't have any concerns now. LAPD has a special project, so they always monitor every interview I do.
Wow.
Every time I'm on television, every article I write, they ask for copies of the tape, and it's well known. I've had other officers. I have sergeants who are like the Internet Crime Unit come talk to me and tell me, "Hey, man, I know everything about you. I've been following up on you. I've signed your case. I want you to sign my book and stuff." So, those are not things that I'm making up. But I know they're watching. They're always watching. And even, I don't know if you guys remember, Lance, during the Christopher Dorner, after I was on CNN, talking about the Christopher Dorner case, Chief Beck made a statement. And he said, "So I understand there's this ghost from LAPD's past who's saying that things haven't changed and the department is saying. And this ghost from the past is saying that we're still racist and so forth." And he kept referring to me as the ghost.
Wow.
Which will be the subtitle of my next book, "The Ghost from LAPD's Past."
Mm-hmm.
They're watching. I know that. I don't have any fear whatsoever. LAPD's thing is that get the most gratification by sending a cop to prison, because they know that's the police officer's worst fear. And so they would get that gratification by trying to send me to prison, saying, all my friends are worried that, hey, they're planning something to do something, to you. But, I'm very mindful of that. When I do radio shows, I'm very mindful of the things I say, because there's no statute of limitation on civil rights violations. So, I'm very mindful of that. I'm not afraid, but I'm very cautious, and I don't.
Absolutely.
I'm never totally at ease here.
Right.
That term that you used a second ago, special project, could you elaborate on that? Like, what is that and who is that reserved for?
I was listed as a special project because at any time, I'm more likely to do something that, or to give out information in some kind of ongoing investigation. So they're always monitoring to see, where my comments are going, who they're directed towards, and if there's any kind of criminal activity that I might express or expose. And that's how it was explained to me.
All right.
And you can read between the lines with that. You know what I mean? I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's like really obvious. And, I'm glad that you, because of the man that you are. And we raise the stakes when we speak out. Many people feel as though, to be quiet is to be safe. They will come after you the same way. They will put things on you. But with different platforms and different interviews you've given and the things that you write, it raises the stakes, and they're definitely watching. They're definitely listening. I know they're listening right now. Hi, agents. How you doing? I know you all so well, because they're already here, Brian, and Mad Guns are here. Exactly.
Right.
And they're mad because they don't eat good like me. But anyway.
See, a lot of the stuff they do is not head is they look at you and look at your potential to see where you may go.
Yes.
Like right now, they'll look at me and say, well, he hasn't said anything. He's not a radical. He's speaking the truth, but at some point he may get frustrated with you, and he may go a different direction.
Oh.
And that's what we want to try to prevent, and that's what we want to try to catch. Talk about, I don't, agree with, I don't think that, non-assertive protest is beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
They're just waiting for me to come out and say, we need to riot, we need to organize this, you can get me on. So they're always monitoring to see, where you're going to take it, where you're going to end up.
Yes.
Frustrated, they know that, my view may change. It may change drastically and radically. So they're always mindful of that, and they're always watching to see that.
Beautiful. Oh, I haven't even asked you to just like name out your books, how we can get them. You're so humble, man. I love your spirit. But come on, let's self-promote. Let's promote. Come on, tell me about the books, where we can get them, the titles, each one.
Yeah, my first book, which I wrote on duty, and I wrote while I was still a police officer. I would take breaks, jot down things that were going on, put the finishing touches on it, ask to work to death, finishing touches on it. Called One Time, the story of a South Central Los Angeles police officer.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that got me fired from the job. It basically, I go in chronological order. I wanted to make a difference, wanted to make a change, and how I use events to describe how I changed, became short-tempered, violent toward everyone. Is that LAPD always tells people that they're our family. Anyone who's considered not ideal, you should eliminate them from your life. That LAPD is your new family. Found that not to be true. I have relatives who are gang members. Disassociated myself with them. My mother constantly told me, hey, this is your real family.
Mm-hmm.
She always kept me grounded. This is your real family. We go visit some of my relatives who were in prison, see a whole different side of the people that I arrested, and that kept me grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And so my whole thing is that, I came on the job to make a difference, stop getting violent. But how can I effectively go and do that if I'm ignoring the people in my family, who are part of that?
That's right.
Part of that element. What is that? Can't ignore them. And so, I just go through this whole process of, how I changed and how I started looking at things and, how the job affected me. And I talk about how it was gratifying. The media, people say that police officers aren't violent, that it's our fault. I mean, it's the community's fault. But police officers are violent, and they go look for that violence. And that's what the department didn't want to hear, because it was supposed to be a kinder, gentler department.
Right.
But in my book, I said, that's what I woke up for every morning to go to work. And that was it. I started off by talking to gang members and trying to teach them that there's a better life. But in the summertime, when it got hot, they all started dying. And I quickly abandoned that. And everything happened so fast. Quickly abandoned that to everything was about the job, about capturing, chases, beatings. That's the kind of stuff that I gravitated to, and all the partners that I worked with. And the big thing is I go into the dialogue that we talk about. But that's what police officers, that's what they do. That's what they live for. They live for the fights, the car chases, all that stuff. It's not about helping people, making the community better. It's about feeding your own ego, your own adrenaline rush. So I go into all that. That's my first book. That's the one that got me inspired. And then I have another book called Honor Without Integrity. And honor without integrity means that holds the job, the image of the job, how it's supposed to look, but you use other methods to get it done. Mm-hmm. Lack of integrity. And so just chronological about how, house acceptable, and things like that. Continuation of one time.
Beautiful. Usually,
and they're all available on Amazon.
Yeah, that makes it so much easier. You know, the sad part about it is, and I know that you will not indulge in anything to put your family in jeopardy or your life or anything like that, but you know, they're so quick to, when someone does something that they don't view as patriotic or proper, they're quick to snatch it off of Amazon. You know what I mean? The same thing happened with Brother Cosmo. When, you know, they say allegedly, because like I say, it could be computer generated, you know, special effects graphics or something like that. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. How do you take someone's writings down when you have actual killers who are locked up right now, who are making money off of books on how they killed people, and stuff like that? And it's always slanted. So using that, whenever we have anybody who writes something, poses something on this level, we need to support it and get those hard copies, get those books. And when we see the videos, download those videos to our computers, download the interviews and the things to the computers, because, you know, so-called big brother, he's not a brother to any one of us, but he's somebody else's big brother. They have a way of snatching our stuff down, of wanting to recreate reality to always make us look bad. You see, so, you know, the title, I had to put it out there a certain way, but we spoke on so many other things, and we will continue to do so. I just want to say that at the 4-hour mark, my hacked equipment always cuts off the audio, and I have to call back again, but I don't want to break that mold. I will wrap it down now, another 5 minutes. And I just want to tell everybody who's listening, never have I done a show for almost 4 hours that maintains such a smooth feel. There's no drop in energy. That's good. And you all know that I can go on for hours more, but there are some things I got to get ready to do. You know, I might be the great Lancescurv with this show and everything. I'm not calling myself great, but Mr. Scurv will chase me and beat my behind if I don't do my chores for the day. So we'll do it one more time as far as the wind down thing in 5 minutes. And when we do the show again and we speak online again, Brother Brian is here. And if there's one or two other people that have his demeanor, that we can just go through the questions. And man, guys, get your questions together. I'll get some more questions together, and we'll join this show together with the next one, and we'll reach out and deal with all the comments of people who left things under this video when it goes up after the show is over. Go ahead, Brian. I'm going to ask you to do it again. Give me 5 minutes. We got 10 minutes before this thing cuts off, but give me 5 minutes. We'll bring it down to a wrap down, and I do appreciate everybody for being here. And it's good to end it on a high note. You know, and we're going to come right on back, and you let me know when you can, Brian. But go ahead one more time. But, you know, we can't get enough of you, man. Good stuff today. I appreciate the time that you spent, and you knew that we'll be able to go in deep here when we speak, and we got deeper to go because there's so much more that we have to cover.
Well, you know, I just want to say that our books are also available on Kindle, so you can get them electronically as well. And you know, I'm just thankful for being on this show. It was a great show.
You made it. You made it that way, man. You made it that way. Thank
you.
You
did it. You know, I look forward to being on it again.
Yes.
Where somebody asked, is the image important when getting? Answer that real quickly, and that is police officers. They appear to be good at reading people. They pride themselves on reading people, and they do not treat everyone the same. You're of a lower social economic background, you will not be benefited of same type of treatment that someone who is from an upper class, neighborhood. You won't be treated the same. You know, in the area that I patrolled, we had the hood, and then we had one area called Baldwin Hills that was on the far end. That was really upscale, middle class black. and people were not treated the same. I also worked in West LA division. People were not treated the same as they are in South Central LA. And cops are very mindful of that because over lower income neighborhoods, they usually don't complain. A lot of times they don't have the knowledge or the resources to make proper complaints to complain to. They may not have a computer. They may not have access to the numbers. You stop people in the west side of town, they tell you they're going to write the mayor. They're friends with the mayor's secretary, and usually it's true. Even for a regular traffic ticket, they'll make it difficult for you. A lot of officers shy away from who know the law and who are able to complain to the right person. And if you look like you know what you're doing, I'm not mess with you. They'll just strictly by the book and try to get it out of the way without getting a complaint against them.
Right.
How you present yourself and your image is definitely a factor. But again, I thank you guys for the platform.
Thank you so much.
Follow me on Twitter.
Yes, give that to us.
Brian. It's Brian. Oh, it's Brian Bentley. One time. I don't even know what it is.
Well, you know what? I'll find it because we're on Twitter together. So I'll post it in the comment area or the information area below, and I'll lift all your other information for the books and everything, and I'll put it down below. And I also have to Mad Guns put those other two, part 1 and 2 together from our health show together. I'm going to do that later on when I come back in. Make sure that all the information goes back out there. And Brian, I definitely want to speak to you within the week, man. Maybe next weekend sometime we can continue on because everybody here is loving you. And I know this is going to go over well. It has. I mean, my phones are lit up. Every bit of communication I have, I'm like jumping around like a crackhead, man. It's over here. So I know this is going to really cause more to want to delve deeper and pick your brain. This was just the warm up. This was just the introduction. And everybody get out there and support him. Who stood up and wrote about his experiences, and you were in a position to document this stuff with the brain that you have and the courage. And yes, you've caught some scars, but you're over it. You're beyond it, and you're here to tell a story and to help other people. And I do want you on other shows where we can speak about the veterans. We can speak about, sadly, between now and next week, and I'm not holding you down to it because maybe 2 weeks, but if we can do something next week. Even if it's brief, but just at a constant level. Unfortunately, maybe this week somebody else is going to get shot and killed. Now, I mean, it's almost where we're trained to think that way. We know that that's the way it is, but God, Lord, when does it end? So we value what you have to say and what you have to share.
Yeah. It's to the point where you wake up in the morning and you expect to kill.
Yeah. So, that being said, I'm going to wrap it down. Mad Guns, thank you for coming on in and bringing your, excellent questions and statements and stuff and giving me a chance to take a little break.
You're welcome.
And eat the food. Sorry for stuff on my face, but I had to eat, y'all. You know how we do it here.
Whatever.
I'm going to do it. But, yeah, Brian Bentley, man, you're a man of integrity. You're a scholar. You're a king. You're my brother. I'm proud of you. And we will be back.
Yes, absolutely.
It sounds like I'm cutting the show short at the 4-hour mark. So this had to be good. Actual itis right now. I'm just sitting back just like, wow, but I have to do a few things and stuff. And I will call you or text you within the hour and we can line up when we do it again and we'll advertise it even more so and going deeper. Thank you all so much. Let me just say, like I usually say, download the Lancescurv app at the Google Play Store, the Amazon Store, and the App Store. Subscribe to this channel. There will be more shows this weekend. I don't know when it's going to be like that because I have things under the hood of the site to deal with and other things to, regular stuff. I got to go cut the grass. I got to go, sometimes I want to lay in that little pool of slobber in the pillow and get some extra rest. I might want to do that. But, that being said and done, it's a wonderful journey, and I can't do this without you guys. I'm just so glad of the energy, and this definitely has staved off my since I have none because I have enough to tend to here. And also, like I said, you can reach out to me for suggested topics or some hot tips that you want to tell me that, you can't tell the world. or just to give me the feedback, which I love the feedback, you can call me, but I prefer the text messages because I can see them at 407-924-8793 or 321-310-7326. But don't forget to subscribe. And also, hey, we may not all be on the front lines marching. I don't believe in the marching thing. We're the only ones marching. But the bottom line, take this link and you share it with everybody that you can possibly share it with, because of Brian, a lot of knowledge and a lot of things were shared truthfully today. Thank you all so much. I will see you later. Don't know when later is, but it will be within 12 hours. We will speak here and be here again. And Mad Guns. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care.
Lancescurv.com. Bold, raw, and uncut.